Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ashland Planning Board meeting, Thursday, April 25th. Just a reminder that the meeting is being broadcast and recorded, and I am calling the meeting to order at 7:16. As always, first item on our agenda is the clerk's report. That goes to Kate.
We have had one correspondence from the public since the last planning board meeting.
And Kate, are we up to date more or less on responses that you need or have gathered?
The one that we got between the last planning board meeting is one that's specific, that wouldn't be the agreed upon clerk response.
Okay.
So that does, and I can resend the ones that I have probably 5 or 6 I'm not sure they've been responded to.
That might be a good idea. It's been such a crazy couple weeks that I don't want them to get lost in the shuffle.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is our public hearings. We have 2 public hearings tonight. The first one is 6 Chestnut Street. Peter, can you just give us an update before we start?
Sure. So tonight we have our applicant and his representative, Alan, and they are here just to kind of give an update, an overview on where the project stands. This past Tuesday night, the applicant appeared in front of the Design Review Committee. It was a long meeting, but they do plan to go back to the Design Review Committee next Tuesday night. And so we'll be there for that. But in short, the applicant's, engineer has submitted a revised plan. It did come late. There was a couple iterations, but the latest came in everyone's packet. And then also, just to make a note, I did print out the email that came from the applicant. The applicant's representative, Terry, the engineer, who was here presenting at the last meeting, and it just kind of tried to answer some of the planning board's questions. I know at the last planning board meeting, there was that question about volume in the storage of water, and Terry did do the math, and the applicant is able to account for all required storage on the property. And so I know that was one of the sticking points, and obviously it was clarified, and the applicant's engineer was able to obviously get over that hurdle. Other than that, I'll let Alan talk about any of the other updates, but just to make a note, the parking area or the parking spot on the entrance to the property coming in off of Chestnut, you'll see that they did locate a bike rack there, and that was also from one of the comments made from the Design Review Committee to have a bike rack on site, and so it was placed there, obviously to locate the bike rack there, but also to minimize and/or to take up that parking spot that we kind of deemed as a red flag. So with that said, I think I hit the most of the points. Alan, do you want to talk to any of the other updates?
No, that's you pretty much hit it on the nail. Everything has been addressed per the last meeting that we were here. The orientation of the parking spots has been moved so that it's no longer facing that exit. So the safety concern has been addressed. And while it's still a quote-unquote parking spot to appease the owner, we are assigning that spot specifically just for the bike rack area. So
Just want to speak into that mic. I'm sorry, Alan. Sure. Just so people at home we can hear it. No, it's all right.
Got it. So while the spot's orientation has been moved, as we mentioned, the number 12 parking spot will remain as a quote-unquote parking spot, but it'll be assigned specifically just for the bicycles. It's not meant for a vehicle. The only reason it's remaining as a quote-unquote parking spot is just to appease the owner with the numbers. So we don't actually need that parking spot, but the owner has a concern, wants to keep as many parking spots as possible. So we're just trying to basically mitigate that from the owner's perspective, as well as tending to your concerns.
So I did, so the Design Review Committee meeting was on Tuesday, and I had requested that Alvaro send me the tape of the meeting, as I watch them to see how, especially how the first meeting goes, after, because we send our planning board memo and things like that. Oh, sorry, I did not have this on. So I watched the tape of that, and another thing that they had mentioned, they said that, or I think Terry, had mentioned that there was an email from the property owner, Britain Realty Trust, about the dumpster.
Yes. So
Oh,
one of the abutters had made a comment
okay, sorry.
regarding the location of the dumpster possibly exacerbating an existing rodent issue. And to that note, obviously, we're going to have everything up to code. By no means do we think that our operations are going to contribute to an exaggeration of the problem. And if we do notice such an event, obviously we'll have pest control take care of it.
Okay, so instead of potentially moving the dumpster, which I assume meets all setbacks or whatever of the bylaws or will.
Yeah, currently the location of the dumpster meets all bylaws, all recommendations, and it's there.
So it's just you're looking at it as a matter of making sure those dumpsters are
Correct.
able to prevent the problem as much as possible.
Correct.
Got it.
And
Okay.
again, we by no means do we want a rodent problem ourselves.
Right.
So,
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, well, I wanted to, are there questions from the board? Obviously, this is still in process, but I have a few things that I wanted to talk about their next view to the design review committee. But I wanted to take comments from the board first.
I think the compromise with the bike rack seems great, if the property owner was willing to make that work. So, and the dumpster concern, it's hard to know how to address it in light of the fact that we don't really know what's going on at the neighboring property relative to the rat issue. I would think any dumpster in Ashland is a potential rat problem unless you have an outdoor cat. So as long as it's in code, it's hard for me to visualize why we would move the dumpster without more information as to the rat issue next door. So I'm comfortable with what's been presented.
Yeah, me too. The site plan looks fine. I mean, I see why they moved the parking spots that way. It's a little odd that it's kind of counter the circulation, but it's a two-way circulation everywhere around the building, right?
Correct.
It's two-way, so I guess. My question, Tricia, and I did not see that tape. Was there a conversation on the first meeting, maybe you can tell us, about the materiality and the finishes of the building that are being proposed?
So the architect herself was not present that night, hence there were probably more questions than answers for that meeting. But regarding materials, I'd be happy to answer any of those questions to the best of my knowledge.
So is the architect going to be present
On the next meeting,
one?
they will.
Okay.
They had a technical issue and they weren't able to join the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think, I don't think it's something we need to go into in our meeting because it's listed, as part
Yeah.
of, that should be part of their meeting.
Yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
just questioning if it was discussed at that meeting.
Yeah.
But what I do think is important, because the Tuesday meeting was, in a way, a little unfortunate, because Terry was there who presented to us, and I thought he did a really good job, because he was there and he was answering the questions as best he could, with full disclosure that he wasn't an architect, that he doesn't know some of these answers, but he was trying to, be as helpful as he could, and I thought he did a very good job, because there were a lot of questions, and he was kind of there by himself answering them for an hour and a half or whatever. So the not having the architect there was difficult. On the other hand, I think for that meeting, and I was going to, have Peter maybe put this list in an email, because I know at the end of that meeting, the design review kind of gave you a list of things to kind of look at for the next meeting. But I wanted to make sure that they were very clear, because and if need be, Peter can send you examples of another project, right? Because
Sure,
typically.
that'd be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, because typically what we're seeing is not just the 3D renderings, but the elevations shown flat. And you have some in there, but, or the architect has some in there, but they're line drawings, they don't really show the color.
Correct.
You
That
know-
is being updated as we speak.
Okay.
There will be new renderings, presumably by next meeting.
Yeah, and then, and like I said, I'll have Peter put all this in the email. But for the architect working with you guys to propose what the new colors would
Yeah.
look like, what the new version of the building.
That'll be all specified. in
Yeah,
there.
but which so that they can actually talk about that with you. And the other thing I would say that, the new vegetation that you're adding, like especially that one right near the street where we talked about, which is really the storage for the stormwater.
Yeah.
On the renderings right now, it's still shown as concrete. And that's gonna help
Correct.
your case a lot too, to show that it's full and green.
Correct.
And the trees in the back to really help, because I think there's a lot more in the project than the renderings are currently showing off. And
Yeah,
so I wanted to
we
make
agree.
sure it's presenting itself in kind of the best light.
100%, it makes sense.
Okay, but I will forward those so that Peter can get them to you, even if it's just a little checklist for your architect.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
My
else?
minor comment is, I think we appreciate the fact that you tried to solve our challenges that we put across for the bike rack and that parking spot, but just looking at the flow of it, as much as that parking spot is a dangerous one for a vehicle that's coming in, I think it's far more critical for a bike rack to be there, because that means people are walking, cutting right across that. It's not like you're going to have a continuous flow of traffic, but now you have people parking their bikes and walking right across the traffic. It could have been a landscape element if you had brought it right up front next to that ADA parking. And if you were to, I don't know if, I think it's easier for a car to reverse into that parking spot than having bike racks, which is kind of hidden in some way. It's not up front near the entrance. So that was it feels like the flow is not there yet.
Completely warranted. And our idea to mitigate that was to paint arrows in the parking spot to direct the flow of traffic somewhat once they're in or out from the exit, right? The reason why the parking spots are oriented that way is ultimately to discourage anybody to go into that area. So we're trying our best to avoid that situation.
Yeah, but that's a good point, though. I mean, in reality, if you if you incorporate the bike rack into any of the other landscape items, you could actually just use that as a parking spot. I mean, it's no longer impacting the sidewalk, which was the comment.
Okay.
As long as it's not dangerous for the pedestrians, I mean, what's the difference?
So the depot was saying.
So you're basically saying that the bike rack in itself can be relocated and keep it as a parking spot, functional parking spot?
I don't see why not. I mean,
Okay.
the objection was not to the number of parking spots, was to the way
Got
in
it.
which the car may actually hit somebody that's walking. And a bike rack can be in many places, actually maybe closer to the building, to Deepa's
Okay, we'll be happy to
comment, so-
relocate that.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be.
The parking spot 10, my
12.
glasses did not work next to
No,
the ADA.
this one.
No, so the one next to the ADA spot up front. Is that, oh my God, my eyes are.
Oh, yeah, well, the spot there, or you can incorporate
Yeah, that's
it
right
into.
next to your landscape, right up front.
Yeah, up front
No
next to
issues.
next to the street where the people would come on
And-
the bicycle.
Yeah, I think it's easier to reverse your car in that parking spot. I know you did that to accommodate our conversation last week, but it feels it may be safer to bring the bike racks up front.
Not a problem. Be happy to relocate it.
Is that spot 18, next
I
to
think it's
ADA?
spot 18, that one all by itself.
The one next to the ADA. That's all I can see right now.
It would be then up front where the bikes get, I mean, I don't see
I mean,
this corner being any kind of a safety issue because it's so busy, but
Yeah.
you're also, your bike it's near the entrance. It's, like you said, it's safer. You're not going to get hit by a car while you're
Yeah,
parking your bike.
Yeah.
There's a number of ways that the rack could be somewhere around there.
Yeah, it
We
becomes
would-
an element more than actually a fixture on the site.
We would certainly appreciate any suggestions if you have, and relocate it as such.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions on this? Okay. Do you have any other questions for us while you're here?
Not really.
Okay.
Obviously, the plan will be to have the applicant go to the design review committee next Tuesday night. They come back to us on the 9th. And so hopefully on the 9th, we can kind of have a revised plan, look at design review comments, and then we can kind of move forward from that point.
Yeah, and I think Peter and I were maybe going to hopefully try to attend that meeting, just to try to, because it seemed it took a little bit for the design review committee to kind of get into the project and understand what was going on. So we just thought it might go a little smoother to be able to answer any questions or to explain what we had talked about over 2 meetings, so.
Yeah, we certainly welcome any participation from you guys.
Okay. So I think at this point, we'll just continue it to the 9th, and then we will move forward. And obviously, like Tricia said, I think, I myself and Tricia hopefully will be at that meeting, and then we can hopefully help move that conversation along.
Sure.
So.
Great. We appreciate it.
All right. So we would need a motion to continue this public hearing until May 9th. Excuse me, yes, May 9th.
I'll make a motion to continue 6 Chestnut Street site plan approval to the April 9th, May 9th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkata.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Arjona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So we will see you on May 9th.
We thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and as always, we'll be in contact, as we have been, and,
Absolutely.
all right, we'll see each other next week.
You got it.
All right,
Thank
take
you.
it easy. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, next on the agenda is 151 Main Street. I believe this is being continued, but Peter, can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, so this is 151 Main Street, the former fire station. Tonight, we do have Alan Waite on the call. Alan is representing Clover Road. In your packet under item and/or tab number 2, you'll see an email exchange between myself and Mr. John Muldoon, and he is the applicant, along with Alan from Clover Road Brewing, and they are requesting a continuance, and I'll let Alan kind of talk a little bit, because I know he was looking to present and/or just to kind of talk to the board, but they're having some back and forth with their architects, and they just want to make sure that they get to the board what we requested, and it's been semi a challenge, but I will let Alan kind of speak to that. So, Alan, if you don't mind, via Zoom, can you please step forward? I have made you a co-host, so you can unmute yourself and just state to the board, the reasons for this request.
Absolutely. Thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. So yeah, obviously we were hoping that we'd have those revisions from our architect sent over by now and be able to discuss those with you guys tonight. But they've had a series of issues with, the architect that was working on our project is no longer with that architectural firm. And then, we apparently they redid the full drawings and instead of just making the adjustments that we had. So it's gone back and forth, and it sounds like we're really close, but we kind of missed the cutoff for tonight. So that'll be we're looking to continue that in the next meeting.
Questions from the board? Yeah, I think I just want to, I just want to reiterate that I think from our past meetings on this, that, everyone is, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but in general support of the project. We're glad that this building is going to be reused. We like the things that you talked about as far as your business model. But we just can't, it's hard for us to go forward without a drawing that accurately represents the changes that were made and the things that we talked about. So we're kind of stuck until we get that that final drawing that gets put into the files as an approval document. So we're here ready when you are, so just to let you know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's been frustrating all around and sort of some bad luck. But yeah, we're very much looking forward to getting to that step and getting you those drawings. So, you know, I don't foresee any other issues, but yeah, so hopefully we're ready next for this next meeting.
Did anyone have anything to add on to that discussion? Okay. In that case, we appreciate the report, and we'll need to continue. Is July, or sorry, July? What month? May?
No.
Is May 9th going to be enough time for?
I think, Alan, you're shaking your head, so I think May 9th is enough time, and then we can kind of go forward. From a procedural standpoint, we'll need a motion to extend this until May 9th. But furthermore, going back with and Alan is actually CC'd on this email with John Muldoon, from a clerical standpoint, that we do, along with that motion, is to extend the date of final decision to May 23rd. And that would be the Friday after our second meeting in May, which I'm hoping that will give us enough time to work with the applicant.
I think you have May 24th on here, which would be the Friday. Is that what you mean?
Oh,
So
yes,
the
I'm
meeting
sorry.
would be the 23rd?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, so it would be to extend it to May 24th. And so hopefully that will give us 2 meetings to continue to work with the applicant. And if we needed more time, obviously, if something arises, that we can make alterations from that point. But I think that's what I emailed with John about, and he did concur with an email agreeing to that extension.
Okay, so do we need, we've done this before, but do we need 2 separate motions for that, or can we?
We can wrap it up in one, I believe.
I'll make a motion to extend the decision deadline for 151 Main Street site plan approval application to May 24th. And continue this hearing to our next viable date,
May 9th.
May 9th.
Is there a second?
Second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So we will see you hopefully on May 9th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay. So wow, maybe you were right. Our public hearing for the MBTA, which is next on our agenda, is scheduled for 8:30. We cannot start that early. So we will, why are we being so efficient? I don't know.
I know, this is scary. This is,
Yeah, that's right, okay. So let's look ahead and what we can take care of. We can, yeah, we could start with the meeting minutes and work our way back. I don't think, besides the historical committee, we're not expecting any other visitors, are we? From sustainability or?
No, we are not. I did go back and forth with the historical committee, and I said most likely we'll take them up after around 9 o'clock after the MBTA discussion.
this one?
Yep, that's historical stuff. There's 3 pieces of historical information. There is a 6-page, looks like a PowerPoint, and then there's a map, and that is their proposed local historical district. And then they sent over a preliminary study report draft of their Ashland Center Historical District. So they just kind of want to get that to the planning board. But no, there are no other groups on the agenda that will be appearing besides the Historical Commission. So obviously we could talk about item number 6, number 7, and really 6, 7 minutes and kind of go from there.
Well, why don't first we get through any kind of updates and meeting minutes and just have those all done. Everyone has the meeting minutes, what, are they in section?
They're right in front of tab 1.
Oh,
Not
okay.
tab 1, but
Right in
the regular stuff.
There's two sets of meeting minutes, March 14th and then March 28th. The March 28th ones are new to the board. The March 24th ones, I believe,
March
these,
14th.
excuse me, March 14th were sent out on Friday. The March 28th were completed recently. And I can bring those up to share if that's appropriate.
Kate, for the March 28th minutes, do you know how many correspondences?
I was just looking at that.
Yeah.
I can check, see if I can get, I don't think I get to it on my phone.
I mean, I would suggest if we're not sure how many you reviewed, we can be more ambiguous and just say receiving several correspondences.
I think it's something we can also Peter could fill in later after Kate,
Yep.
either by viewing the tape if it's on there, or giving a number and that would call that a amendment.
Does it, do you want me to make a motion? Do we have any changes to the March 14th?
Is
Or-
anyone still reading the 14th?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's good to me. I don't know.
Right,
I'll make a motion to approve the March 14th, 2024 minutes as drafted.
Second,
a roll call vote,
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
and Tricia Kendall, aye. So then we'll look at the March 28th.
Any changes from anybody?
I think I'm good.
I'll make a motion to approve the March 28th, 2024 minutes as drafted.
Well, with the exception of filling in the amount of correspondence.
Correct.
I'll second.
Vote,
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
and Tricia Kendall, aye. So now it feels like it's time to go home, but it's not. Okay, so meeting minutes are done. If we just kind of take a minute to, let's say we're going from item 9 down, all of our reports and administrative matters, we've I think, skipped it for a couple meetings. But if anyone has reports in there,
I'll just say for the comprehensive plan, we're wrapping up the comment period. Did we ever finish our meeting in the box? So if you have not filled out the survey yourself personally or anyone that you know, I think the deadline is tomorrow.
So is the, I mean, so we had the meeting a week ago, right, with the consultant. I thought that was really helpful and informative. She made a comment about the touch points, I think she was calling them, about the percentage of people that we were striving to get, like, and is involved in the process, and mentioned that that the deadline for that wasn't today, but there will be other touch points for the public. I didn't imagine this, right?
Yes, so
As we go on.
Yeah,
So
there's time.
There's kind of the components of, yes, this is the big part of the drive, obviously, but there'll be other places down the road where public will be involved in this as well, is it?
Yeah, so technically this is the vision part, and then you actually start the planning piece. So technically the public is going to have input at the planning phase as like you come up with ideas to actually, oh, now that we know this is the vision for Ashland, let's come up with plans and then present it to the public. So there's absolutely time for that, but I think the consultant, one of the consultant team folks was like very clear that this is the primary period for public input because this tends to be the crux of it. Without the vision piece from the public, it's hard to plan. So we should try to squeeze out as much public input as we can now so that we can get the vision right.
So is the meeting in the box stuff, like, I thought I saw a deadline of today. Is that
Tomorrow.
26.
tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, tomorrow.
So you could do one tomorrow.
After this meeting, I'm gonna be like, because I'm asking because, in the course of the design review committee meeting, Bill Novakowski, who is the representative to the comprehensive plan meeting, Kathy asked him about hosting a meeting in the box. This was just on Tuesday at some point in the future with his neighbors and he seemed like he was going forward to do that. And I'm thinking, maybe I got that wrong about that. The meeting in the box part was supposed to be wrapped up. And I think he made someone made a comment. I'm just listening to a recording of the meeting. But that could be submitted anytime in the process. And it just might be, like, I don't know if there's just a misunderstanding or if that comment a week ago today was misunderstood or confusing. It's not the way I understood it. I understood it.
Yeah,
think,
I
like,
mean,
but-
the way to think about it is the consultant team needs a deadline to be able to deliver a vision to the steering committee.
Right.
So the steering committee needs the vision summary based on all the meetings in the box, deadline tomorrow. Without that deadline, the consultant can't give us a vision. Once we have a vision, we can start planning. Could this random meeting in the box or extra meeting in the box come back to the steering committee and maybe influence some of our later discussion? I don't know the answer to that.
I was just
But it's
gonna-
not going to be part of the vision.
So I just want a couple of corrections that
Yeah.
I'm sure you agree with. Consultant is not giving us a vision. They're smushing
We're gonna
together
be-
information.
yeah.
That will be the steering
Sorry.
committee. No, I mean, it's
Steering committee
important, though,
develops the vision with the
With-
consultant's input.
which will go back for more public, there will be a potential for public comment on that as well. I don't want anyone, if they did hear, to think that we're hiring a consultant to tell Ashland what our vision is.
Yeah, no, and
So-
I think that point was actually made very
I know,
clearly
but I
by-
just-
Yeah,
Right.
I know.
yeah. Migraine
Right.
talking, but yeah, absolutely.
So I just wanted to bring that up because it was kind of,
People might be confused.
yeah, because
Yeah.
there's 3 members of the comprehensive plan meeting here, and I thought maybe it should be clarified. You know?
Yeah, I do think I'll speak on my own behalf. My opinion is that the steering committee should have been more thorough with the public as to the deadline for the vision piece. Like, the deadline is tomorrow, and I don't know how many people really know that. But to the really important point is the public will always have the ability to reach out to anyone in the steering committee, offer feedback, and there will be formal additional feedback periods. I would be concerned if Bill is confused because his meeting in the box, if it's going to happen next week, will not be part of the materials that will be the strength of, like, the discussions for the vision.
That was my
Yeah.
concern, that there
Yeah.
might be some confusion
mean-
maybe after last week amongst the members of the board. So I'm just bringing that
Yeah.
up because it's maybe it's just one person that was
Yeah,
confused.
no, I think
So I'm
that's a
just bringing
fair
that-
point, and I would suggest that you reach out to the chairs of the steering committee and share
Okay.
that as chair of the planning board, so that,
It's-
it-
yeah.
you know, you heard it, and you can speak to that confusion.
I will do that. And
That might be helpful.
the other thing I wanted to bring up in these, just in the reports, and I wanted to do it separately, appropriate or not, separate from the public hearing, it was about the design review committee process. And I think it might be something we need to, I don't know if we needed, I'm going to need another retreat after town meeting or something like that. Because my impression on listening to the meeting, and this is, if anyone wants the tape, you know, they can be sent the link as well, was that the members of the design review committee who were there, which were 4 members, no one seemed to, they didn't seem to review or reference the memo that we sent. It didn't seem to be a part of the discussion. They seemed sometimes not to be aware that or not to be aware of the material that was online, that, you know, that's online and available, just the same as we get it. And on the Friday before their meeting, Elvero had sent them the memo from the planning board, a link to the files, and also at my request, because I had talked to them about this before, at least to Kevin, a link to the planning board meeting and the minute at which we started our conversation for our initial meeting. Because they had noted that sometimes it's hard to know what the planning board said, and they can't come to our meeting and their meeting. So I sent it so that they could look at our initial conversation and have that as a base, like as a, you know, to understand the project better. And I didn't get the sense that anyone had looked at that either. So I'm a little, and then given the way the meeting went, I'm just a little, I'm concerned that the process isn't working about, despite our memos and at the end of the meeting, at the end of the tape, they were still looking at adding into their checklist things like checking to see if it's an all-electric building, you know, and checking, you know, asking for interior plans, which I thought was very clear. I thought we really clarified that, Marcelo and I, back in 9 to 49 Homer. And so I have some concerns, and I'm thinking that we're needing another, it's not benefiting them or benefiting us if we don't have a clear process. And I think I thought it was much more clear than that, and listening to this meeting, I realized it's not clear.
I think the last time we met with them was probably more than a year ago. Am I imagining that time is flying? It's been a while.
No, it's probably
Yeah,
been-
but the point is that it seems straightforward if what I remember the goal was, when we send this memo, that memo basically is the agenda for them to address that.
for that project.
The main agenda items. They can discuss other things, but that should be the agenda, one by one. Because otherwise it's very impractical.
Yeah, so I didn't, like I said, I want to discuss it separately from the public hearing, because I don't think it's related to that public hearing, but I wanted to make
I mean, I think they're like the key committee that's our support. So having a yearly retreat with them would be a really good idea. And I don't think Amanda was part of the prior retreat with them. So I think it's always good to kind of reset once a year. And I think it would be really, I remember the thing I liked that started happening is we did start to receive memos from them that were very well organized and responding to our memos. So I felt like we took a step forward. Maybe there's some confusion or certain projects have not followed that. So I think we should get together with them,
But-
reiterate some of those positive steps and remind
But
everyone of our role.
Do you really need a retreat for that?
well, it's
Can
one,
you, I mean, it seems a straightforward process. Question, the planning board expects that this is the basis of the conversation.
I mean, it could
Try
be
it.
another memo from us, but if they're
Yeah.
not necessarily reading our initial memos, I'm not sure they'd read the memo, saying to read the memo.
Well, it's one of the,
But could also be
Sorry,
a
I'm not
15-minute
trying to-
opening. Could be a 15-minute opening in one of our hearings.
Yeah, just as a touch base.
But I don't know
Just-
if they're all going to be here.
Well, they don't
So-
all have to be here, but
Yeah.
if they have quorum, they need to be, what, 3 of them, 4 of them? I don't know, how,
it's one of the reasons I thought it would
Do
be
we have-
good for, like, that, if our schedules allow, that Peter and I will attend the next meeting
I think that's a good idea.
to try, because I thought too, I thought many of these things, I thought were clarified in the memo, in Marcelo's and I response to their 9 to 49, their 9 to 49 memo. We were very clear. We tried to be extremely clear, and I don't know where all that went.
I think
you
it's
know?
fair. I would support you going to them to convey that we need their help, and when we give them a memo, it's really important for us to get a response to that memo. I don't know if we need to say, this is your agenda, this is your only agenda, because they're adults and they can develop whatever agenda they need.
But we didn't
But I
say the
think we-
only agenda. We said
Yeah,
that's the
but I think we need
agenda
to say,
that we
hey,
care about.
we are really like relying on you. Technically, without their response to our memos, we're kind of in a weaker position as a board. So we need them to
So I
actually
have
read it.
one comment, like, I think we're saying, so the board asked you and Trish to mark up the 9 to 49 homer, but to me, that does not translate to process, right? Because it was about that, we got it, here, attention to these things, right? I don't think that was accompanied with, we never need you to review these things. So I don't think it's actually been clearly established as a process. I know what you're
But
saying.
I don't think that's true necessarily completely, because the instructions way back then was based on the bylaw. Say, this doesn't apply. You don't need to talk about that because it doesn't apply. This does, that does, whatever. So it's an instruction that was very narrow, or trying to be very narrow, so that the information that comes out of the analysis is useful, because it's not a free-for-all. Otherwise, why, it doesn't help anyone.
I mean-
What helps someone, especially what helps us, is to identify here the points that are critical of this project or that project, and say, advise on this. I thought that's the help for which this committee was created. Right?
So again, like my position on this is if we have 5 questions for them, we need those 5 questions answered.
Yeah.
I also think that we're all adults and we all make mistakes and we all have our own kind of interests and interesting points we want to make. And so if they want to make extra points
Of
above and
course.
beyond the 5, they should do it, because maybe we missed something.
But
Maybe,
we're not saying that
do you know what I
they
mean?
can't-
And so, but the memo we give them should be responded to. That should not
And that
be
should be the
like,
focus. After
Yeah.
that, okay,
Yeah.
fine. But we will only be interested primarily on response to those items, because that's why we sent them.
All right, so I think, like Peter and I, like I said, are going to try to go to the meeting in order to just provide the perspective and the background to the project that we've been looking at, you know. But also, perhaps I'll ask for a little time just to talk to them in general terms about some of the things that we thought were, because these were planning board documents that we've been reviewing, and so it's and that we used in our process, that it just doesn't seem like it carried over. So to talk to them about those things, you know, as well. Because like Marcelo was saying, some of the things were, like as far as the interior plan, one of our notes was that neither the planning board nor the design review committee
Shouldn't be asking for that.
it has a right to do this, right? It's not in either of our purview, right? So things like that, which I think is very clear to us, but still isn't clear to them. And that's what, some things we have to,
it might be helpful to encourage them to attend like that planning conference that happens every year. Encourage, because I always find it useful. Kate and I tend to go every year.
Yeah, no, you know.
That might be helpful. as
Design
well.
review committee, they're always welcome to do
Yeah.
that.
Do we
you know.
invite them when we get those things yearly?
Typically, I'll look into that. you
Yeah,
know,
that might be good.
And then, but I also just want to reiterate, I'm happy to send, if anybody's interested in watching the meeting, then I'm happy to send that out, you know, and and just to get a perspective of the conversations that are going on, I think.
All right. Does anyone have any comment on that? I just wanted to make the board aware, so, okay.
Can
Is
I
there
go
any other-
back to the comprehensive plan?
Oh,
So
I didn't
we are-
realize you were done.
No,
Sorry.
it's okay. When we do meeting in the box, they like a picture, and I did say I didn't get one, but I would try, and they were actually happy, so we should try to get a planning board picture to include what they do with it. I don't know, but they like to have photos of meeting in a box. Yeah.
Do you have some mascara?
we better take a photo now at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. Well,
like
I was
for the-
thinking,
Before the midnight
exactly,
hour.
because I was like, there's no way it would have, we finished at
Nobody's
like
gonna be
after
smiling.
11.
We could make an effort to,
I can ask Matt.
sure. Just, my phone is really old. Does anybody have a more modern?
Mine's
Cell phone?
slightly,
Yeah.
but.
We're so sorry. Do we want to be,
PV selfie here.
great.
I was going to bring the meeting box to hold up, but it's okay, because sometimes people are
You should
working and
make a sign.
sometimes,
You can
yeah.
just write a sign
We
that
finished.
says Complete.
I think
Task
we're going to have to
complete.
go in some.
Tell us if we don't fit in.
All right. Say cheese.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you.
Didn't know this was included in your. All right, done. What else you got, Kate? Is there anything else you need? Blood samples, anything?
No,
No, thank you.
23 and me.
All right.
It did get submitted, so that,
What's that?
the meeting in the box from planning board did get submitted, so we're counted, so.
Oh, good, good. And I submitted one from CPC, but I did not get a photo. Sorry. Is there any other reports, administrative matters, anything on that bottom half of the list? If not, we still have a half hour, and we could start to talk about either the specialized code or 10 to 60 Main.
Why don't we do 10 to 60 Main while we're sharp?
Okay. So,
Everyone had, how you doing? So everyone, I did receive an email from Marcelo, and and it came out late, but it's printed out in everyone's binder, and so it's there. Furthermore, there is the 7 points that Mass Housing does look at, so that is right there too.
so that's right in front of the meeting minutes?
Yep,
Those two things.
the first,
In front
it's
of one.
in the front,
So
in the front, yeah. And everyone can kind of take a look through that, through Marcelo's email, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, I could explain kind of the process, because this was really like a stream of consciousness. It's not, there's nothing special here. The idea is everybody can edit or adjust. What I tried to do is to try to narrow there's only one that I think of those 7 parameters that Mass Housing considers that we can, in my view, comment on, which is the appropriateness of the project. Everything else is whether it's fiscally possible, all these comments that I myself cannot address. So what I tried to do here is to set up, and I expanded on each, but just 4 basic topics that that to me kind of help guide the rationale of whether the project is appropriate or not. The first one is the relationship of the project with the historic heritage of the town represented in the mill buildings themselves. So there's, and all these 4 aspects are based on the kind of the introduction of thinking of this site, that this is not as a typical site. This is a really special site. And because we had 2 years or whatever talking about this project before, we've already addressed a lot of these things. So this site is probably, at least the way I see it, probably the most consequential site for the town for the next decades, because of everything that's in it. So these 4 points I thought could address that. So the first one is the historic buildings and the relationship of any project that gets developed there to them. The second one is the relationship with the natural environment, and we're talking about the river walk, the waterfall, the river edge around the entire property. It's a very special thing, and it's the first thing you see when you enter the town center. The third one is what I just said. Is this project is really the gateway project. This is what is going to define the downtown, and to me, not being carefully crafted to really be that is a huge danger to potentially destroy the fabric of the downtown as we think we want it. And the last one is the architectural language that's been explored on what was submitted, and I know they even said it, what was submitted is kind of an opening, right? I hope. There's a language that is inconsistent with a site of this nature, in my opinion. It's in general, if you make a caricature of it, it looks like a 5-story wall, completely flat, that has some materiality, and that's it. With flat roof, it's a big wall. A big wall as a gateway on a town that has a lot more texture, different a form-based code for the downtown, is exactly the opposite. And so I thought that, I mean, I'm sure you can get more. I tried to get it as narrow as possible. And the problem to me, in the way they explained it, and I think they have all the resources to do a much better job, and maybe this is kind of the way, they were clear on the explanation that, we started with 250 units, because that's what the project needs, and basically work from there. So it seems to me that the process, that's one way to do it. I mean, probably you have to do it if you're going to try to really test the project. You start with that objective, 250 units, right? Because that's what we want. And then we go down to the site and bang all the corners until we get them. Okay, and that results on that. Now, I think the important thing is to do the reverse, is to start with deciding what's important about it and see what you can craft out of it, and you're going to come up with a number, with a different number, and maybe there's variations thereof. But the point is, even on the process that we went through before, we came to a point where they seemed to, the architect at that time seemed to get it. It's like, okay, you're trying to translate the variation of heights, the different roof lines, the markers on the corners, and that's what. It's a long process. Now, on the other side, I also put here, there's a couple of things that they are doing that I think are really good, that I think are worth, exalting, like having that entire corner by the river to become a public place. That's something that we were asking last time around and didn't seem to make a dent. And the fact that they're removing that really inefficient, crazy, weird parking lot that's in front of those buildings and making a green area. That, for the pedestrian, is a much better entry point to the downtown. So basically, that's kind of a summary of, you guys can read it, but that's what the intent was.
I was just wondering also, you had focused this on item B of the 7 points. Did you think at all, it seems to me that some of it might also be C, like you said there was only one. C is that the conceptual project design is generally appropriate for the site on which it is located. So it seems to me.
Oh, well, I guess,
some of it,
yeah, it applies to both.
Okay,
yeah.
that's fine. I just
Yes.
want to see if you.
No,
okay.
that's a mistake then. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
By definition, yeah.
I mean, I agree with everything that Marcelo said, and the way the framing is on point B. I had the same comment on, I think, point C as well. I think it behooves us to put comments forward on any of the ones that we sort of have any angle on, I think. Like my lawyer brain says, like, let's comment on as many of these as we possibly can. I agree that, to me, B and C certainly, and a lot of the comments about B, I think, work for C as well. But just, I think a lot of the public concern we've heard around this is, the conceptual project design is generally appropriate for the site, like, concerned about scale and things like that. I think that comes in to C for sure. And then the other thing I wanted to note is just, and I don't have all the, I wasn't on the board when this project was originally here for all of that time. My very first meeting as a board member was the meeting that it was withdrawn. So, literally.
We have fresher eyes then, maybe.
But what I wonder about whether or not there might be an opportunity to comment on G as to control of the site, just with respect to some of the unique history on that site and the fact that there are EPA considerations there. And I think that we've received some notes from the public about whether or not it might be sort of fully within, whether or not there might be some restrictions there due to sort of the history of that site.
But isn't that a term of art, like legally control the
So-
site, meaning that the ownership is secure?
I think ownership and control are both terms of art, and you can own a site, but not have unfettered control over what you do with it.
So I looked into that because this is kind of like a shorthand for the actual language of the language. And so in reviewing the Mass Government Chapter 40B Handbook for Zoning Board of Appeals, which by the way talks about planning board role in all of this as well, the control is based on the applicant or related entity owns the site or holds an option or contract to acquire such interest in the site, or has such other interest in the site as is deemed by the subsidizing agency to be sufficient to control the site.
So there's got to be a contract of sorts.
Yes. And so, you know, I think the only comment we as a planning board can make is that we have no evidence of such control, period, and that it's up to the subsidizing agency to determine if adequate control is there. I am very concerned about control because as far as I know, this is still owned by the applicant that was before us. So this new applicant to me has zero control, but I have no evidence of it because I've never seen any contract. So I think as a planning board, I would be most comfortable saying I have no comment, and that the subsidizing agency needs to investigate whether this applicant has control. So that's my interpretation of that.
Isn't, I mean, aren't these 7 findings the things that, at least the way she explained it on site, those are the things she's going to look at? So
Yes, she said
is
that.
going to determine, or the state is going to determine through her, if this applicant has control of the site. Whether we know or don't know who has control of the site, it seems in a way irrelevant, right? Because no matter what we say, they're going to determine that, and how would we know? I'm just,
Yeah.
it's like, are we going through these even though?
But she did say that exactly at the meeting. She said, these is the criteria that we are going to look at. That's it. We're not
Yeah.
going to look outside this at all, but we're going to dig into this. And so any comments you have for this, we'll read, basically.
So the interesting thing is, I know that obviously this is what they're responsible for findings, but some of the preliminary work I've done, like there's a design review guideline for 40B projects,
I read
which
it
I
too.
would argue that project, that's preliminary submission, does not meet that. And that's sort of an other of these things. You could smush it under C, but I disagree. I think we need to be very firm in saying, like, it does not comply with those other things. We don't need to be,
But I think it falls under C.
Yeah, because the design guidelines, I read them, they're not very extensive, but they are clear that
Yes.
context and context in the town matters, right? Cannot be a disruptive mess that comes into a town.
Well,
and
okay,
lands
I
there.
guess, I mean, I could go with that. I guess my feeling, though, is if we don't have to be forced to only comment on those things. They should be applicable, right? But we don't have to be.
Just as she said that they, I guess I understood that they're
I
not
mean,
gonna
it's just a
look at anything
presentation.
more.
Like, we want to be able to present the
But I
material
like-
to
I
the
like what you're
state
saying.
in the best way possible. If this person who showed up on behalf of the state is thinking about these 7 terms, your point fits beautifully under C. It's kind of a separate point, but it's the same.
No, but Katie's right, they have design guidelines. They
Yeah.
have some points, which are kind of what I was trying to address there
Yeah.
in my own words.
So we can
but-
do it both ways. We
yeah,
can
they could-
reference the design, we can put it under C, and we
and
can
tailor the comment
expand
to
it.
that, too.
Yeah, I
Sure.
mean, it's more of like a presentation, like how do you want to deliver the information to the state? The heading can be C, and then you can just expand to include all of that.
But the other question is for Michael, because he's going to collect comments from many other boards. So how is he going to put, like,
So
package that?
so
That
the
was
dis-
my
so
question
the
to
po-
Peter as well. So, hold on a minute. So Peter has already organized a couple of these feedback things or is in the process of doing it from other boards. But do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we took, we were on the ZBA, I staffed the ZBA meeting on Tuesday night, right? And the ZBA, obviously a little bit different because they're gonna be the board hearing this case. And so they were a little bit more impartial, you know what I mean? But I think we kind of identified, the zoning board of appeals are trying to identify areas of interest during the application process that they were interested in the applicant going into greater detail, such as obviously scale, parking, traffic, transportation, ingress, egress, kind of the meat and potatoes of a site plan process. But I am, and Alvaro, we are compiling them in more of a memo format into a Word document that we can kind of be squished together. And so what I would ask if anybody has to email anything, and so Marcelo, I'm going to take your email, and obviously I'll be able to cut and paste it and put it into a Word document. But at least I think it's to put it in a memo format, to put it in an email into a Word doc is the best thing for me. And so then I can kind of cut, paste, maneuver, and develop a product that can be sent back to the planning board, but then also sent to Michael.
So
'cause Michael's
as
gonna
I
be doing the
understand
same
it,
thing.
I mean, in looking at the handbook for the zoning board of appeals and the process, like planning boards get to create their own written comment. So I hope I'm understanding you correctly, that this will be a memo on behalf of the planning board, that it's not like you're going to cut and paste what we're saying into another document from the town.
No.
We will have our own memo on behalf of the board. And I think we're literally the very first entity listed as an entity that needs to provide public comment. So we should have our own memo that is geared towards our position. And I will add that one of the key elements, at least in the guidebook from the state, is if we have a recent comprehensive plan, we are the jurisdictional entity that should speak to that. Now, we don't have a recent one, but we are very involved in the comprehensive plan that's happening. We've been part of a meeting in the box. We have opinions about that, and we're supposed to include that in our comment. We should be thinking about, just like to your point in your draft, you're talking about some of those things, like the vision for downtown. Tricia was involved in the recent changes to the bylaw in downtown. Like, we should make sure to include those jurisdictional elements, because that's literally what, I'll read you that sentence. The planning board should be asked to weigh in on the project's relationship to the city or town master plan if the plan is current and actively being implemented. Obviously, that doesn't apply to us because we don't have a recent plan, but we've been actively involved in the planning process, and we should comment to that.
So I guess that's probably better said than my saying, we don't need to only focus on this, right? On these 6 or 7 things, because we may be remiss in missing other comments. I don't think we need to be forced to limit to these comments. And I would be upset if we did, especially
Yeah.
given that you have the real deal.
I mean,
that
I'm
what
not
it's asking
disagreeing with
for.
you, Kate. I see your point. What I'm telling you is all of these things that I've commented on can easily be fit into these categories. So like the comprehensive plan can be fit under the B or C. So I think there's ways for us to find it. Like, I think the next step, because we don't have a lot of time, like I loved Marcelo's draft. I think it's great. And I think maybe all of us should kind of pick an element that we're especially interested in and try to augment and make comments for Peter
Feel
to
free
kind of.
to edit my draft too. I don't,
Yeah, I mean, I think, and let me know that I'm wrong, or, you know, but like none of the other elements to me, you know, A, D, E, F, G, like I don't have anything to say about the pro forma.
Yeah,
Like
me
I have,
neither.
right, I have nothing, I know nothing about that. I couldn't begin to tell you if that's working or not. So to me, the planning, what we do as part of the planning board is B and C. But I think also, like you said, everything that you've mentioned, everything that's been mentioned so far fits under those.
Yeah.
And just like when we're
It does.
putting out, we're going through the criteria, it carries more weight, I think, when our concern, no matter what that is, whether it's comprehensive plan or whatever it is, if we can fit it into the criteria
I
that
think
you're
we can.
considering, I think that's what we do instead of making
Yeah.
our criteria
Yeah,
our own
I
at
think
the
it'll fit.
bottom.
Yeah.
You know?
I do want to comment on the pro forma because I think it's the most complicated element of this process. From what I've been able to gather, the pro forma analysis that the subsidizing agency does is slightly different from the pro forma analysis that the ZBA is going to do. Because essentially, my understanding, and Peter can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the agency is basically saying, hey, the project you're giving us, the developer presents it, can be viable, which is a little different from what the ZBA has the power to do. The ZBA can actually put pressure and negotiate less density. And then there can be an argument made between the developer and the ZBA whether or not that is viable, which is a different pro forma analysis. So to the extent that we want to contribute to this pro forma argument, one of the things I'm thinking about, what I remember from our meetings with the developer, is when we put some discussion or focus on density, I remember we were sort of negotiating in a way with the developer, and there were certain conversations about what would be or would not be viable. I don't know if anybody remembers that. And I was under the impression that the point that we got to was viable. And so I think that is a value add to the
What do you mean the point that we
like
got to is
the
valuable?
density that ultimately
200.
we landed on at the end, that ultimately was not approved because the project was withdrawn. My recollection is that that was not being viewed as not viable. And I think that
Yeah, but
that is
that's-
a value add
But
on the
the-
pro forma piece.
That's my recollection too, but there's a huge difference, is that back then, Richard was, and he said it many times, he was looking for a partner because he did not have it. So he was almost hedging his bets. Now he has a partner that actually is a specialist on this type of stuff. And they are the ones that saying, that they said it at the site. They say, there's a contaminated site, there's a lot of work we have to do, we're gonna improve a lot, it's very expensive to build, so we need 250 units, that's how they said it.
Well, except pro forma is not up to the developer. Towns can actually hire their own experts, and the ZBA has the authority to do that.
Sure.
So it's not as simple as saying, well, they said it's not
No,
viable,
I-
right?
I agree.
So I
and-
guess where I'm going with this is, I think there is some benefit to us as a board recognizing that for us, less density appeared viable at the time of our meetings prior to the withdrawal. And I think that is a value add comment to the state.
But
What the state does
that's not a
with
comment on a
that,
pro forma, though. I don't feel I can comment on any pro forma. I haven't even seen it. I guess I don't have even the interest on seeing it from that point of view, because then you start negotiating with, from the point of view of, oh, I know what's viable, and you think something different is viable. I don't think the planning board is on that type of negotiation. I think what is not viable to me as presented is the negative impact that something like that would have in the downtown as it is and the downtown of the future. And I think that would make the downtown not viable. It will be a disaster if something like that got picked.
So we're going to, given the time, we're going to need to move out of this soon, not that the discussion is done. So we have two options. We can look right now at our calendars to see when, because it was mentioned that maybe we can have a separate meeting just to address this issue. You know, we can see if we can find a date and time that most of us can make it. Our time is short. Obviously, we can do that now, or we can just table this and we'll get back to later in the meeting. But I think even later in the meeting, we're looking for a date.
I think we need a
I have
date
a-
because we need to draft something
Okay,
that we
but
all
I
agree
have,
to.
I mean, a couple of comments, I think.
Just-
So one thing would be starting with your framework and maybe marking it up so then things can get inserted. They can still be messy as topics, right? Because that, I think, moves it along. But I also think, I mean, there's a arbitrary date that Michael Herbert asked, May 6th, but there was an extension to like May 28th or 29th. So I'm all for getting things done, but I'm also not all for like you got squeezed for a deadline that doesn't have to be. And secondly, there's a public forum May 7th, and I do not think that we should be submitting comments until, I'm not sure everyone can go to that or is interested, but at least there might be some topics out of that as well. So I don't
Can
think
we
we should.
explore if we have more time?
I think we can explore it from Michael if we have more time since we are at the top of the list of planning comments. Personally, in regard to your second comment, I think our letter comes from the planning board and not from the general public. They're having their own forum, and we are our own board with a different experience than the general public has, and both of them are viable, but our memo is coming from us. That doesn't mean we might not pick up on
Yeah.
something in
And
that
that's-
meeting that might influence what we
Correct.
think. But I want to, for me, that's very clear that this is a memo coming from
Yeah.
the
It
board.
absolutely is, but we
Okay.
do represent the public, and we may hear something that
That's right.
would influence
That's
us.
right. But we also have to have time to process as well, you know.
So can we come up with a
so-
proposed deadline to run by Michael that is
I'll talk to
respectful
Michael
of
tomorrow.
both deadlines?
I'll
kind of
talk to
ours.
Michael. I think, moving forward, and in no sense did I say a memo, I'm creating the ZBAs in a memo format, and obviously we would do our own for this board, just to clarify that. But I think to start things off, I'm happy to talk to Michael. I'm happy to forward out, Marcelo's email. And then also, if you do want to have thoughts and ideas, put them in writing. I think that's the best thing to
And
do,
send
Anna.
it to you,
And send them
right?
to me, and then I'll start to compile it, and I
Yep.
can send it back out to everybody else.
For our meeting.
For our
Yeah.
meeting, or just in general, I think if you're home on the weekend and you're looking into this stuff and you want to type, just send it to me. In Anna, you're a very good writer, and I think you have a lot to say about this. So I think just put it in writing and
Sure,
and send
I'll
it
give
to
it a
me,
shot.
and then I can send it back out to
You
the
know, that's
planning
also
board.
important. I think there's another one, right? Coming up?
Another 40B?
Yeah, well, potentially.
Well, so this almost is going to be almost a template for us to.
Correct.
To frame the framework from which the planning boards,
So let's do it right.
yeah, do it
So,
for both.
Anna, if you could,
Yeah, I can send some thoughts to,
well, I was talking
Yeah.
about the document you're
Oh,
referring
yeah.
to here. If you could either send it to Peter
Sure.
Helms. I might have it already, but it's just been a
Yeah.
mess of emails
yeah,
recently.
and I will say that the town of Brookline has a very detailed 40B website with every single resource you could possibly have on
Yeah.
40Bs.
I think I need someone to dumb it down
yeah,
for
yeah,
me
yeah.
right now, because I just don't have the
Yeah,
time.
I don't either, but the
If you
beauty of.
edit it, send me the best.
Yeah, the beauty of these documents is that they're searchable. So like I search for planning board, pro forma, environmental stuff to just kind of get your eye to it because there's so much material out there. But I think this document would be really good to get to the zoning board of appeals.
Yeah, if you can send us the cheat sheet,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
Yeah,
looking
no,
for.
so we're working on that with the zoning board of appeals, and we're kind of building that up, and Alvaro has done a very good job in building up our zoning board of appeals website with with 40B material. And so a lot of the stuff, Anna, that you're speaking of is now all linked on our website. So,
Great.
yes.
All right, so do we want to look at a date time right now, or does anyone need a 2-minute break before we start the public hearing for the MBTA communities?
It's up to you guys. I mean, we can all step out when we need a break too.
Okay, everyone steps out when they need to.
I didn't do the
Can-
Google poll.
It wasn't really
Was
meant to
there-
be done because it's
Okay.
getting too complicated. So
Okay.
what I'm looking for are, okay, so can I assume that besides me, most people cannot meet between 8 and 5? Is that
Yes.
that's a logical, besides me?
Yeah.
That's a logical assumption? Okay. So then, I assume 5 doesn't really work either. So
It's
if we,
hard.
if we look really between 6 and 10, because after that, we know we all get loopy, are there any, what nights are
Yeah.
people like, I cannot do it on this day of the week? Is there any of those?
Tuesday.
No Tuesdays? Okay.
What time you say it?
Between 6 and 10 in the evening, let's say, like that,
Oh,
okay, so, but no Tuesdays in general for Deepa, right, Deepa?
The fourth Tuesday is a challenge. The other Tuesdays I can make it
Can
work.
you give me a date on the no?
We're looking only at April, right?
Yeah,
May.
and that will be in
it
person or that
April
will
or
be
May?
remote?
No,
don't know yet, so.
Is it
could be
April
both.
or May? Are we looking at April or May now?
Both.
I think May, I think it's due
There's
at
only-
the end of May, but you can give me the May date, but we probably won't be going that far.
I can make it happen on, when am I traveling? 7, 14, and 21 is good.
Tell me the dates that are no.
28th,
No April 28th,
May 28th.
no May 28th, and no
That will be
April.
too late anyways.
I know, but I'm just writing it down.
I think I'm traveling
And I'm
15th and
traveling
16th.
30th and 1st, 30th April and 1st.
Okay,
And I think
So
I'm
that's a
traveling the
Tuesday.
15th and the 16th of May.
okay, so wait a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so. Let me write this somewhere else.
It may be easier to find from the majority and then come back.
So wait, so I went just really clear, Deepa, no
30th April
No April 30th, no May 1st.
and no May 28th.
Okay.
Are we thinking like a virtual 1-hour meeting to review the draft?
I don't know yet. What did you
Okay.
say, Amanda? No?
said no May 2nd, and I also can't do May 2nd.
Okay. Anybody else have stuff on, I can't do May, well, that's,
is town meeting.
May 1st, yeah, so no May 1st, that's
Yeah,
town
May
meeting.
1st town meeting, I can't do the 2nd.
No May 2nd.
Right.
Mine is fluid. I typically, in general, could accommodate almost every day, but things come up.
Things come up.
That,
Okay.
but so that I shouldn't.
I'm just
you
trying
should-
to
You shouldn't
eliminate,
guide it,
I'm just
based
trying to
on that.
eliminate the absolute no-goes.
yeah.
Weekends, we have one weekend in between, or a couple weekends in between. Are weekends completely out for anybody?
Weekends are
Yeah,
harder.
for me it's hard.
Is there a way we can like do like the hour before one of our regular meetings? Like a 6:15 meeting right before our regular meeting? Something like
So
that?
on May 9th? That's a
Yeah.
long time away, though. We're trying to get these
Yeah.
thoughts to, so
Yeah.
we can start to mush it together, right?
We
didn't have Mm.
anyone next on Monday night. The 29th and the 6th still alive.
6 is gonna be the night before.
But I mean, the
full.
idea is that some work starts happening. So
Yeah.
by the time we meet, Peter has
Okay.
received comments, everybody has had the chance to digest it, and, right?
Mhm. I see.
We don't start at that time.
Gotcha.
Well, we can't really draft it in between among ourselves because that
No,
would
no,
be.
but you're gonna start seeing what everybody's
Yes, we can-
thinking if Peter circulates it.
I
What
don't
about Monday, the
think-
29th? You said no one mentioned a Monday. What about this coming Monday? Even if it's just for an hour, 90
Yeah,
minutes.
I could do an hour on Monday as long as it's after 6.
The only issue is
Can be remote, can be.
Yeah,
we don't have enough time to post
Oh,
That's right.
okay.
is that right?
public hearing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
Monday, it's usually 48 hours. So
So we need to be.
I would have to post it today for a
Okay.
Monday meeting.
Can we do next Tuesday is bad for you, the 7th, the
I'm
30th.
traveling.
You say Tuesday and Wednesday?
I'm traveling Tuesday. Yes, I'll come back Wednesday night.
Okay.
Could we do it
And,
Tuesday anyway to kick it off?
And is it okay if just I miss?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be in a room by the time you have this
It's
meeting.
okay if you miss, I just don't want to, I mean, there's no requirement that we do this or even have a quorum,
Yeah.
right?
So if you want to hold it for next Tuesday, if my day gets over and I'm back in the room, I can always join.
And we can record it, and you can add in.
Yeah.
Can we,
So if that's easier.
what
let's-
about Tuesday, the 30th, this coming Tuesday? Can we find
Can we just do it a little bit after 6?
6:30?
Perfect.
6:30 on Tuesday, the 30th?
Let's
Sure.
try.
Okay, let's try it. Go post it.
I know. Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning.
Level of
But that would make
excitement.
the deadline- that would make the deadline?
Yeah, Tuesday we could still make the deadline. You could post it Tuesday.
And then we'll see if we
So
want
that
to.
means we need to get comment to Peter like tomorrow.
I'll double check with the clerk's office, but usually it's 48 hours in advance.
Do we want to select another day, just in case we have a?
So
Yeah,
the way
sure.
I mean, in all practicality, I'm looking at that is going to, I'm not going to get comments before then. I will happily come to the meeting, but there's no way I have time to do that, to push that forward.
Trying to think,
I feel
tomorrow
like
is it
that, I
for
know, so I
comments to
feel
Peter.
like that 30th could be just much more brainstorming bullet points and
That's what I'm
pushing it along
thinking.
for a
Yeah.
next draft.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
If at all practicality, I think
Or
that's what
we're mushing together a draft
Yeah.
while we're sitting
Yeah.
there, something like that.
It's
Yeah.
more a working session, I think.
Working session.
I
Let's
mean, I'll
read
try
the
to throw
document
something together, but
Good.
like realistically, it means giving it to Peter early tomorrow so he has time to squish it. Can you send me your document in Word?
I can forward
Okay.
Marcelo's document.
Okay.
And then, and really tomorrow I'll double check with the
'Cause I
clerk to
can
make
just
sure
squish it in
that
there.
We are going to meet the deadline regarding the posting requirements for Tuesday,
Okay.
and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, and what I can do is I can try to take these A through Gs, and I can try to take Marcelo's language and put it under these, and then add some of the things I heard about.
But you don't need to do that for tomorrow. We just need to look at that on Tuesday.
Right, for Tuesday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so no need to
But
go home and
Marcelo's
pull on
already
again.
done that legwork, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we have a plan there
great.
where we can hash it out.
Okay. And on Tuesday, though, one of us has to peel out and go to design review committee.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
That doesn't sound like a great plan.
No, I think. No, I think we can make it happen because it's about brainstorming, like you said, it's not a final document. We can listen to the tape, we'll tape it, right, if we have it, it's, so, no, I don't think we should, I think we should stick with this. It has to be done sooner rather than later, let's just stick with it,
And
we'll go
obviously,
from
we
there.
should check with Michael if turning it in closer to mid-May works for him.
Yeah.
So that we could use our next May 9th meeting or whatever for our official wrap-up.
Yes, I'll talk to Michael about that and then kind of go from there. And if it all comes crumbling down, we can, we'll work something out and we can organize by email.
Okay. All right. Okay, so next on our agenda is the MBTA Community Zoning Bylaw Public Hearing. This is continued from our meeting 2 weeks ago on April 11th. Peter, do you need to
No.
read the whole thing again?
No,
Okay.
I do not.
So I did think that I should go through the slides again. I mean, I'm going through them multiple times, but I think that we need that for a basis for the discussion, both for anyone who's watching at home and anyone online who may have questions, to try to make that as clear as possible. And then we'll obviously talk about our approach for the next steps. So you're looking at the slide presentation, Peter? Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so first slide, no need to spend time there. So just to review for people who are unfamiliar with this, the restrictions given to us by the state to form an MBTA zoning district, that these zoning districts have to be at least 50 acres within Ashland. And we have to have a minimum of 20 of those acres within a half a mile of our train station. The rest can be anywhere in Ashland. It doesn't have to be in one big zone, it can be in multiple zones, but if we break it up, then each of those has to be at least 5 acres, it can't be smaller. Within each of those zones, covering again at least 50 acres, we have to have a minimum density of 15 units an acre on each parcel. And we have to allow multifamily housing with no age restrictions. So these can't be over 55 communities. They have to be open to all ages. All right? So there's another component of that, and this is unit requirements. Because Ashland is a commuter rail community versus a subway community or adjacent community. I think,
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Have different requirements.
We're a rail community.
Because we have a commuter rail station in our town, we need to provide for 15% of our housing units. By the 2020 census, Ashland has 7,495 housing units. We have to times that by 15%, which gets us 1,124 housing units. So that's the amount of housing units we have to provide. So now our restrictions are, we have to have at least 50 acres, we have to have a minimum of 15 units per acre, and we have to make sure that adds up to at least 1,124 units. It's important to understand that none of these units have to be built. 0 have to be built. We just have to provide the zoning for it, okay? Next, okay. So back in the fall, I believe it was in 2023, I want to say September, a working group was formed between the select board and the planning board. It included myself, Tricia Kendall, included town planner Peter Matchek, assistant town planner Alvaro Esparza, and select board member Joe Mignani. And that was the working group. Our task was to find a means by which Ashland can fulfill the MBTA requirements. So but in our group, we outlined priorities. Our first priority is to what we called use what we have. Ashland, over the years, and especially in very recent years, has approved a good amount of housing, starting with Cirrus, the Cirrus Apartments, but other ones as well, like the 100 Chestnut Street that's currently in construction. So we felt as a community that we were already doing what the MBTA Communities Act was asking, and that we were providing dense housing around Ashland. So our first priority was use what they have, or use what we have. I'm not sure why they're all labeled one.
As like one of top priorities.
So, one question on the calculation that you showed before.
Mhm.
Projects that have been approved like that one, that it's under construction, those units count for that number or not?
None of that matters. The land can be completely empty or completely full. What's going there now doesn't matter.
But if that parcel ends up in one of those districts?
We don't have to count, we're not counting units.
We don't.
We're counting area, we're counting how many acres, and we're counting how many units per acre we're allotting to that zone. What is built means nothing, okay? So that was number one. What intended to be number 2 priority, I don't know where that disappeared, was to hold the density as low as we could. And I think that's for obvious reasons, right? Number 3 is that we wanted to respect the ongoing comprehensive plan process, that the town, at town meeting, voted to dedicate $250,000 to a comprehensive plan process. We did not want to be making decisions for the town that we thought should come out of the comprehensive plan process. So we were very, very aware of that. Do you have a question?
I just had a quick comment, because I'm assuming you're going to present this at town meeting, possibly. So I was just going to say that it may be helpful to edit that second priority
We're gonna
slightly, but
get there eventually.
okay, that's fine.
Right now, I'm focusing on tonight.
Okay.
Next slide.
I just wanted to say that there's been some critique in other communities, that communities are trying to slide around the MBTA regulations. And I think we need to be careful, because I don't think we're sliding. I think we're doing what's lawfully allowed. And my only suggestion would be that priority should be edited to say, as low density as allowed by MBTA zoning. It's not that we're aiming for the lowest density possible ever. We're respecting the MBTA bylaw or the requirement from the state.
Yeah.
And we're aiming for low density per state allowance.
Yeah,
Like,
we obviously
yeah,
can't go lower than what the
exactly.
state mandates, so
Exactly. It might just be,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So what we started to focus on were 3 districts. So the first one is in the rail transit district. There's two parcels in that. One is Cirrus, and one is parcel A, which is not Cirrus. It's not developed at the present time. The second is the Wildwood district, and where that's pointing at that purple, that is the 100 Chestnut Street project that is currently in construction. And then Pond Street. So item D over there points to Pond Street. It's right on the Ashland's border. It includes both the 501 Pond Street lot, which has an approved project, a project that was approved for that lot. It is not in construction at this time. And it includes the residents of Valley Farm facility next door. And we did that because those parcels weren't big enough to be included on their own. So we put them together as a zone. Okay, so just to go through these various zones, let me start with Cirrus, which is at the bottom, B, just because that's the way the letters were. This is the one project that is currently completed and built. The current density of that, it's a little tricky in this zone, in Zone A and B, because we also have to take into account our zoning that is currently in effect in those districts. So in this district, in the rail transit district, it says you have a certain acreage, but you're not allowed to build on 30% of it, right? According to our current bylaws in that district. So we have to discount that a little bit, right? So in effect, if the current density, say for Cirrus, on the books it would say 20, but really the effective density is only 14 because you can't build on 30% of the lot, right? And the state looks at all of that. You have to submit all of that to the state, right? So, so the same with UGC, right? The property A is UGC. That's been an approved over 55 friendly 40B community, but it is currently in litigation, that site. So the same thing with that. The density is proposed density. If we talk about both of those properties being proposed, if we put it at a density of 22, the effective density is 15 because you can't build on 30% of the lot.
Why can't you build on?
It's in our bylaws right now for that district.
This is redoing the bylaws, so I don't understand how, I don't understand that.
It's complicated, right?
You still have to build that into your model. And so when you get into your compliance module with the state, there's a compliance model, right? You have to build in certain aspects, what's required, open space, parking, all these other items, right? So we've had to do the reverse math and to provide what is the base of 15 units per acre once you start working within that bylaw. And so we came up with 22, and that's gonna work for us. And that was reviewed by our consultants, and it's a number that was kind of hit.
And I understand what you're saying, like, well, why can't you just wipe it all out and start from scratch? We can, but it's complicated, right? It's complicated, and if you remember our first premise, use what we have, right? So.
But the part about 30%, because our current zoning, I'm just having a hard time, because this is new zoning that's being proposed.
Yes
So
and no. Yes and no. I mean, it's not, none of it is entirely new. Because even if when you're in the Wildwood District, you still have to pay attention to the zoning of the Wildwood District. You still have to pay attention to that. You don't just get to ignore it.
So, but just to clarify what Kate is asking, so what would pass in town meeting, if this gets voted positively, would be an overlay district, or
No.
this is just for compliance with the state, but it's not a zoning district,
They are separate districts.
separate?
Yeah.
Separate zoning
You don't
districts.
respect the underlying zoning district that exists.
I think to Kate's point is, I think what Kate is saying is, can't we just rezone entirely from scratch? And I think what Peter is saying is that this is a more viable option. You take the zoning as is, and then you essentially edit it. You create an overlay district on top of it that's a separate
No,
one.
you're not
No.
creating a new overlay
Not
district.
overlay, but
You're editing the
editing the
existing
zoning as is,
zones,
sorry.
right? And you're making them compliant, right? And because there's all different criterias at the state regulations. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to make a current zone that we have, RTD, we're trying to make that compliant with the state regulations. And we have to make some changes to it, some edits, right? So we're proposing to make edits to the existing bylaw of the RTD to make that
As opposed to deleting it and creating a,
correct.
that's why it's easier.
And that's what everyone's doing. Yep.
But it seems like you're taking potentially taking more of the parcel out, which makes makes us look at other parcels to be added, right? Like, I guess the point is, I mean, I respect the process that we said. RTD, the town agreed 20-something years ago to make a rail transit. And if there's more acreage to be squeezed out of there for MBTA, I just wondering.
I get it, but right now, this is the warrant that has been submitted. We can't make any of those changes now, right? So I need to present this as it is now, right? And then,
Yeah, I will say it is consistent with how other communities are doing it. Like, it's consistent with practice to how this is being done.
yeah, so there's infinite number of ways we can do it. This is the approach that we're taking
Good.
at this time.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go on to so that's Rail Transit District, okay? The other two districts are a little simpler, thank God. 100 Chestnut Street, again, the current density, what is being, what was allowed, what was approved is a density of 29 units an acre, and we set that at 29 units an acre. Pond Street has which was approved, a density of 32 units an acre. We set it at 32 units an acre. We did also have to include the residents of Valley Farm, which is already built. That obviously doesn't have the same density. But those two projects those two lots are together, okay? So, okay, something happened. Obviously, that slide is misaligned.
Yeah. Sorry. What is going on?
Was it misaligned on your screen as well?
Yeah, it is. What's going on?
Just put it up. I think as long as we can see everything.
1 minute.
I think this was just about this was, I think, explaining the unit count.
There you go.
Okay. So this is just, it's kind of almost aligned, but this was just trying to go over, this was going over
The UGC and the acres that are gonna come back to the town, regarding the development
yeah, so I was
agreement.
also trying to explain, as part of the complexity of this, also having to do with the rail transit district. Once the last parcel of the rail transit district is developed, which would be UGC in this case, the covenant on that property, which is also still in effect and also still has to be taken into account, the covenant says that 20 acres are donated back to the town, right? So that's something we also had to take into consideration, which lowers the effective acreage we have available in those areas. So even though those sites seem very big, they're not as big as they seem because of the layers of covenants and zoning that's already there.
And really, those 20 acres within a covenant that we have when we purchased that land area within the RTD district, that land is gonna come back to the town of Ashland, right? And that's within the development agreement for UGC. And so one of the restrictions of the state, from the state's point of view, is no town can zone their own property, right? And so what we're doing here is we're subtracting
We're
that
retaining it.
acreage. Excuse me?
We're retaining it to
We're
ourselves.
retaining that acreage, so we're not even putting that into the calculator.
Yeah.
So we're not getting ahead of ourselves.
So we're not impacting public land.
Correct.
Yeah. So,
And/or future public land, and we're taking account for it.
Yeah, so I wanted to have that in there, but it's hard because it's not quite reading, it's not aligned. But anyway, that's what that slide was about. Let's hope the next one is aligned.
Yes.
Okay, so this is where I was trying to explain about the acres and the 30%. I mentioned it earlier. This was talking about taking the acres, minusing 30%, and then you have the acres that are left to work with.
So you're removing the public land? No,
Nope.
not on.
Right.
This parcel, you're taking away your 30% of the land that needs to be open space and/or impervious surfaces.
You're leaving the open space as is.
Correct.
I think this is really important for the public to know, and I'm not sure it's clear enough from the slides. Like, we are not taking or removing open space. We're not taking or removing public land. Like,
Yeah.
that's really key.
But let's get
Yeah.
through and go back to anything that we
Yeah.
need to go back to, because it is really hard to understand. Okay, but the important thing as we tried to, I'm sorry for these alignments. This aligned 2 weeks ago, as you know, because you guys were here.
You're such an architect. You're
Yeah.
like,
No, it doesn't drive you nuts. It drives
don't
me-
worry, I'm like on the words, I'm fine.
Um,
You guys are so much in pain.
Yeah, so, but what all this is trying to do is to show that the unit count adds up to what it needs to. We have to be able to say to the state, we are zoning for 1,124 units, and the numbers we have placed on this thing, on these 4 properties that we're dealing with, add up to 1,124 units.
No buffer.
No buffer, but we don't really need a buffer. Alvaro has already had a preliminary conversation.
And they agree?
It seemed, it's not like it's not guaranteed till everything goes through, but they already take the preliminary look at all this, and it seems okay.
We've already sent all the numbers have been looked at and reviewed by our consultant, RKG, that did the economic feasibility study. All the bylaw changes have been checked out by the AG's office.
Okay, so that's where we were, let's say, a month ago? What's the next line? Okay. This is what started to bother us a little bit. Of the projects that we have, that we're considering on this, Cirrus is obviously built, right? It's highly unlikely that it's going to be torn down and changed. But the 100 Chestnut Street is in construction, right? It's going. They got their building permit, they're rolling. The other 2 projects, which are 501 Pond Street and the UCG project, which is the friendly 40B, are not in construction, not starting to be built. And so there's a risk there that if we change the zoning in those areas, and both of them are 25% affordable. The friendly 40B is 25% affordable. 501 Pond Street is 25% affordable. That's the agreement. But if we change these 2 MBTA communities, we're not allowed to put that restriction on them. So, given that those 2 projects are not yet into construction, they could potentially say, I withdraw my project, I'm resubmitting the project at the same density without the affordability component except for 10%, right? That's the risk. Not the risk that you'd have more units, the risk that you would lose the affordable component. Yeah. So it's a risk, right? So that's what that slide is explaining. So this is where we are today. However many weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, maybe a little bit more, I don't remember anymore, the town received notice from the state that we have a 40B application for 10 to 60 Main Street. What is being proposed there now is 32 units an acre, right? On that site, that's the 250 units. So what we are wondering, and this has come out of the working group and also some other voices as well, is if since now we have this 40B project that obviously isn't finished, it's obviously not, it's just the beginning of its process, and we have a second 40B project that is looking to come in, that seems to be in process. I do not think, we haven't received notice from the state yet on that project, is that right?
We have not received it, but it's imminent.
It's imminent. So to us on the working group, to the 4 of us on the working group, to us, we label this a game changer, that this is new information that we didn't have before, it didn't exist before, and we feel that it's information that we should use in our process to make a better approach for Ashland. Because things over the next 6 months can change quite a bit, both with the 2 projects that we have currently approved but are not in construction, and with figuring out what's going to be happening with these 40B projects. All of that information is up in the air. And we're now concerned that the proposal that we put forth as the best option for Ashland, because of the circumstance, things changing totally beyond anyone's control, may no longer be the best option for Ashland. So, as I expressed 2 weeks ago when we discussed this, my personal view is that this should wait till fall town meeting so that we can see how these other factors beyond our control play out, and thus perhaps present the exact same thing at town meeting, or perhaps not, depending on how everything swirling around us plays out, as much as it will play out in the next 6 months. I think that's kind of the last slide. That's where we are.
Tricia, when you say play out, can you define what is the upside and the downside? Like, simply.
The, so.
40B's come, they start developing, so what will play out?
So what would play out is that the acreage that the 40B projects that use, right? And again, if we look at just 10 to 60 Main, what's currently proposed, we don't know if it's going to be that way. What's currently proposed is 32 units an acre. So even if we said we want to use that property, that's housing, right? That's providing housing. Providing housing near our downtown. Even if we set it at 15 units an acre, half of what's being currently proposed, we can use those acreage to lower the needed density on maybe UCG, maybe on 501, so that it makes it less lucrative for those projects to pull and to eliminate the affordability component.
So
It's all geared to retain that affordability that those projects are providing.
So,
Yeah, to mitigate
Yeah.
risk,
Okay.
I would say, yeah.
so let's be clear, a 40B right now is 25% affordability. And the proposal that you're making is that we make that area by right, which means the exact risk you're indicating that applies to Pond would apply to this project. It's the exact same problem. If we now make this Main Street project by right as part of the MBTA zoning, we're essentially eliminating the benefit of 40B. 40B scares people because they feel that they have no control. That is a myth. 40B allows communities 25% affordability in a real way, and it gives the state direct regulation over how those apartments are controlled, which we at the town level do not have. And so there are massive benefits to keeping this situation as is, especially since, no offense, but the current owner of that property has a history of withdrawing projects. So, to me, this is not a game changer. I don't feel comfortable changing the approach based on the will of one applicant who has a history in this community of withdrawing applications and moving applications around. And I personally think 40B is an opportunity for the Zoning Board of Appeals in this community to negotiate correctly. And the regulations for 40B allow for a very substantive analysis of pro forma viability and environmental issues that, frankly, by right, we do not have. If we make it by right, if we zone this for MBTA, we're going to lose a lot of the statutory benefits of 40B that we as a town don't have. We're not the state of Massachusetts. So I don't see this as a game changer. If anything, the 40B project of Main Street reiterated my position that we absolutely should not include Main Street as part of the MBTA work that we're doing. And I will add one last point, which is that our thinking before, the priorities that we set when we started working with the working group as the planning board and select board together, was to honor prior elements of this community that we already had public hearings on, and we already approved actual projects with density. This project, no one has had a public hearing yet, no one has approved, So to think about it as something that is a game changer, I strongly disagree with.
I think we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting. If we include that property, it doesn't impact their 40B. They still go forward at 40B at the 25% affordable
If they want to,
if they want to.
because we
but
have
there's-
we don't meet the threshold.
But I think
But if they don't, they
what-
would lose the benefit for them of it.
Right, they lose the
So why
benefit
would
of the
they do it?
density. It's a huge, so as Tricia proposed it, sort of, and we could obviously play with the numbers, but it's a drastically lower density that we would propose, right? It would be a major trade-off for them to sort of pull the 40B and what they're currently proposing to reduce down to what it would be zoned by right for. And then
They're in this room to tell us that they're going to agree to the density that we're going to establish by right and withdraw their 40B. You're purely speculating.
I think
We have no evidence of
Hold on,
that.
let her finish her sentence.
But I also think that we're not saying this is what we're going to do and tweak for fall town meeting. We're saying, let's buy ourselves 6 months and information gather and give ourselves time, because it's not just this property, it's also concerns at plot A or zone A. And I think that we have the ability to gain more information and mitigate the risks that exist, because our only path forward to minimize our exposure to 40B is affordable units in town. And we have 2 projects that are currently approved at 25% affordability that would be included in this proposal that we have exposure on if we go forward in this way. And it's sort of, I think it was our best, it was a fantastic proposal, sort of, and then now we have additional information. And it's just a matter of, we're not saying, let's absolutely include 1060 in the next proposal or for a fall town meeting. It's just saying, let's take a minute and use the time we have between now and the fall to glean additional information and then make a decision, is how I understand it. And I'm personally all for just sort of getting some more information.
I think that's exactly right. This is not about, we have a new plan that we're just not telling you. It's about, well, there's a lot of different things that have been happening. There's a lot that could happen over the next 6 months. Don't we want to use that information to put together the best plan for Ashland? Not the one that we thought was the best plan for Ashland 2 months ago. But the best plan for Ashland in 6 months, as close as we can get to having all the information. That's where we sit on the committee after filtering through all this information for 6 months.
I mean, with all due respect, there was a ton of work done by everyone to get us here. Pushing this to fall gives the public very little chances at a second shot because we have a deadline with the state. This argument that the better plan is to make Main Street by right is exactly the kind of argument that should happen at town meeting in the spring. I think that would be a really interesting argument to present. I disagree with that argument. I'd like to see the public's reaction to that argument. Instead of making it by right the areas that we've already approved as density, why don't we make Main Street density? And I have a feeling that's not going to fly. Now, if you want to push it to the fall and you think in 6 months we're going to have an approved project at Main Street, that's naive. This project is going to take severe time. It is an environmentally complex project. The state regulations are very vigorous for 40B. The Zoning Board of Appeals is just starting to look at their obligations. There will not be an answer in 6 months. All this will do is push it to the last minute with the state, and that's not appropriate.
But I don't think that's is looking for an answer in that way. I guess I'm having trouble understanding, but I get the point. But adding that site at a different density is not at all an incentive for them to change the 40B. In fact, is an incentive to just see it through. And maybe negotiate with the town to see it through, because the owners and the developers is in their best interest to get as much density as they want. That's what they're doing it.
That's what they're doing.
Otherwise,
Exactly.
they would have done the project that Richard had submitted before.
That's correct.
So I don't think that one is there's nothing to, what we're gonna see in that 6 months, and that's what I'm trying to understand. I know that there's, Joe said before, there is a litigation on the other side that could be resolved in that period, and that's a risk. Because if we go ahead and keep it, I guess it could become an incentive for them to withdraw it.
Realistically, they don't. No one seems to expect that litigation to resolve itself in the next 6 months. But if it did get the resolve and the project moved forward, that's less risk because the project we didn't approve, it was the Zoning Board of Appeals, but that project would be moving forward as the town intended, right? It's important to know that the 10 to 60 Main project that we were looking at, I believe the units had gone down to 188.
That's correct.
Isn't that right?
100%, yep.
So at 188, I believe the density, and it's about 8 acres.
Correct.
right? The
Yep.
density would still be, the project we were looking at, the density was still 23.5 units an acre, which the proposed project is at 32. We maybe, not having a right answer on this, we could set it as low as 15. So it's really hard for me to understand how a 40B would be dropped at 32 units an acre, but yet they could make it viable at 15 units an acre. If they could, great, but I don't see that, I don't see that happening.
I think the proof of the process that we went through actually proves that it would not, because the argument was that it was not feasible then, at that number.
Correct. And nobody partnered with Rich Gordon to move that project
Yeah,
forward.
no, he couldn't finance it.
Correct.
So you're saying propose it at 15 and take density down elsewhere?
Correct.
I'm not, yeah, I'm
Just to
not,
take advantage essentially of the fact that there's going to be high density there anyway.
right.
On a project we have not yet approved. So it's an interesting concept. The problem I have with it is we need to meet the state deadline, number one. Number two is we've already have approved areas of density. Again, this project has a history of coming in and coming out. Approve it, disapprove it. It's a little bit of an unstable history. So
But that was not this project, Diana. That was a project that did not have a partner that's a specialist on that.
we have
That was
we have
Richard
no
trying to
evidence of
get-
control, remember?
No,
So don't
you-
assume it's a different project.
No, I assume it because it is, in the sense
We
that.
have no
a
evidence.
Wait,
project-
let's let one person talk at a time.
Yeah.
Marcelo, can you finish your thought?
Because a project that knowing the site and the complications that the site has, which we all looked way back then, there's no way, to me, as an architect, and I think we mentioned it back then, we were looking at that project, so that project is not feasible, not as being proposed.
Yep.
And they struggle with it because of that. Now, whatever they end up building here, this is a project that Richard found a person, an entity that does this type of work for a living, and that got the interest only, I think, because they can do it at a higher density. So in other words, that proves to me that there's absolutely no incentive for them to go back on it. The reason for the withdrawal was exactly what Richard was lacking, that he now has.
Amanda, you were going to comment?
Yeah, I think, just to build on these points, I think the idea of including it at 15 units an acre, which is far lower than what it had gotten down to when it was before the planning board, far lower than what it's proposed on as a 40B. Again, this isn't about what actually is going to be built, right? We could include that parcel and have it at 15 units an acre, and it could stay exactly the way that it is. If they withdraw the 40B, that's fine. I think as a board, we probably have enough information to say it's not viable at 15 units an acre for just from the experience of this project and where its trajectory is. So I view the risk of saying, like, we're going to make that by right and then end up somehow
So
in a
how is
worse
the state
position.
and the consultant going to look at this if it's not viable at 15? Like, is that going to fly? Like, are we going to, if we
But
use
it's not about
this,
what's being built, it's just about
Yeah,
what's
it's not
being
about what's being
zoned.
built.
They don't care,
No, they don't
that's
care
their
what actually
formula.
built.
It's about the zone.
So
They're
again-
not looking at
And
there's no
again, it's
performa.
just hedging to say, like, this is a property that is you know, it is not going away, I think is what we had said last meeting. Like maybe it does and it comes back in another form. Like it's not, I think the idea that it's going to like completely evaporate forever is probably not true. And so I think knowing that, you know, 15 units an acre is probably not viable, we included in our analysis or in our proposal, and retain what we do have that is valuable elsewhere, which is the 25% affordability, which we could lose because we have 2 parcels in our proposal that don't have building permits out and aren't built, and they could withdraw those parcels and withdraw those projects and do something completely new under that zoning where we lose that 25% affordability. I think there's a loss there, and I don't see a loss at 1060, but I also think that's not even the decision we have to make today. All we have to do today is say, like, do we want time to consider this given the information that came to us 2.5 weeks ago?
That's correct. 100%.
So I don't understand why this can't be brought to town meeting and simultaneously evaluate, because we will not have any other answers. We're still surmising, right? And so that it does need time to investigate. And unfortunately, like the application said, we knew about this way back in January. The town was notified. I don't know if that's true, but it's on the application. So the notion of a couple weeks ago, I don't think is true. It might have filtered down to be considered a couple weeks ago. But what's the harm of going to town meeting, explaining all of this, including where we are, this proposal partially accepted, reviewed, town lawyer looked at it, it's all good, and explaining that there's another option that we're investigating, but get it voted on. Things can change. None of the 10 to 60 Main Street will not be given a permit between now and November town meeting. The other parcel that's in court, I don't think will be decided, withdrawn, and submit a new application by town meeting. I think that's probably nearly impossible. And I don't know about, I guess there is possibly Pond Street, but I don't know what the holdup is. But I know Peter talks to them, maybe we can get some more information. But I also feel strongly about, as I said from the beginning, that townspeople do not look like they're over a barrel. You have to, the first time I'm seeing it is November town meeting, you have to pass or else we're going to be in whatever mitigation with the state, getting sued like Milton or whatever if it doesn't pass.
I think we're in a very different position to comparing ourselves to Milton. I think that view has surfaced a little bit of fighting back and not doing this. But generally, I think the town has approached it in a very systematic way and also shown over previous years that we are providing housing. We're providing exactly the type of housing that they're asking for, almost. Over 55 doesn't count, can't be over 55. You know, there's some little restrictions that we'd have to take off. But we've been providing dense housing. My personal question to myself is, as a person who has been working very hard trying to understand all of these bylaws and how they fit in and going through different iterations and whatever, my personal question to myself is how do I put forward something at town meeting and support it when I actually am not sure it's the best solution for Ashland? And that's what I'd say here, and that's what I would say at town meeting. That 2 months ago, I thought it was the best solution for Ashland, and now I don't know. And as much as I would like, I said this before, as much as I would like to just cross this off my to-do list and go on with my life, I think I still want to do the best job for Ashland, and now I don't know. Maybe this is the best we can do, but I don't know if that's true.
So originally, when I heard your comments, I was concerned that you were proposing meeting the density by right. If 15% is what you're proposing, and we know that that's going to remove density at Pond Street, or actually I'm in a butter, so I can't comment on that, that it will remove the risk at the other sites, right? So if the math can be done, there could be a point there. Like for me, how quickly can we do the math? How quickly can we see, if we do 15% at Main Street, what can we remove from the list?
Alvaro ran it last meeting.
we were running it, and this is the thing, right, with zoning bylaws, right? Once we have a bylaw, we worked our tail off. Alvaro, I can't tell you how much Alvaro worked, myself, Tricia, Joe, we worked, right? But in the grand scheme of things, you know, our whole thing was we're not gonna include 10 to 60, you know, with the whole process. We stayed away from it the whole time, right? And we tried to work around what we've had, what permits are already out there, right? But regarding what the numbers are, so you do have a big major compliance model that it takes, that's a huge process to run the numbers, right? It doesn't happen overnight. The entire situation is that we have to come up with these bylaws and finalize them, right? Way before our public hearing and advertise them in the newspaper, right? So there's just this lag time that goes in before. This approach, and I can tell you right now as a town planner, was the best approach that we could come up with as a town taking advantage of it, right? But due to these changes, things change, right? And that's what we're trying to do, Anna, is we're saying, okay, the field has changed, right? It's starting to tilt in a different angle. So let's understand where the water's gonna run, and let's catch it, and let's take advantage of it. And then let's redistribute, right? And so what we're saying, and we've kind of said a couple of different times, is we can capture the numbers and redo them and reduce that stress other places. But we just can't do them overnight, right? And we couldn't do them at the last meeting in time to change the bylaw.
Yeah, well, we can't change the bylaw in time.
Correct.
But we could do the math.
We could do the math, 110%.
So that's kind of where I'm at,
And
like-
that's what, I think, can I just finish? That's what we want to do, is we want to redo the math, redo the model, and see what makes sense with those pieces, right? Now, in the meantime, I understand, Kate, your point regarding you got one vote, you know, however, we've worked very closely with the state, right? We have submitted our bylaws to the Attorney General. We are working with the state. We are trying to work towards compliance. So I think we're in a different situation than a Milton, right? But I can tell you right now, as a town planner, if we have information for the next 6 months, and we have 6 months, more months of information to run and to calculate and to figure out what is the best option for Ashland, I can tell you right now, we can come to fall town meeting with a better bylaw for the town of Ashland. And that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're trying to get for the town of Ashland. And I don't want to think that the town's over a barrel in the fall, but I want to say, this is the best option to move forward into gain compliance.
But in theory, we can come to town meeting next week with this draft and the numbers of what would happen if Main Street was 15%. We could. We don't need the full draft to have that conversation
think
with the
it's-
public.
But I think it's just the ideas of that, because 10 to 60 is just, it's just one component. What about the other one? You
Which
know?
is what, that's because the only new thing is 10 to 16. So what else could be changed?
Well, we have a second 40B that's knocking at our door, right? So there are other things. Maybe 501 Pond Street will go into construction in the next 6 months.
Right.
That will take away, like, oh, they're going forward, right? With the 25% as
And-
permitted, right? So there are other things, like everything that's not in construction and not built. There's something else that could happen. I'm not saying it will. I don't know. All I'm saying is that I would like those facts 6 months from now, so that I personally could present what I think is the best plan in 6 months to the residents of Ashland. Well, that's not my choice. That's our vote together. That's town meeting. But that's my personal perspective, that I think I have another opportunity that I think I could do a little bit better, given the things that have changed.
And I agree that with the concerns about the public and wanting to give people an opportunity, I think we all wanted to go forward at Springtown meeting for that reason. I think we were all on that same page. I just think this is a very good reason, and there are, when I'm at the regional collaborative meetings, there are a lot of towns deferring to the fall town meeting, and it's not necessarily for like a super compelling reason like this. It's because like there was a glitch with the consultant or the math was wrong or they can't get it out in time. And like that, I feel like we're not coming to the town of Ashland in the fall and saying like, you know, things were nutsed up for whatever X, Y, and Z reason, so we had to delay to the fall, and now you have to decide. And again, completely understanding that those things happen, we're not in that situation. We're in a situation where we're saying, listen, you know, at fall town meeting, we say, we think that we took the time to put a better bylaw together for the town of Ashland to come into compliance with this requirement that we have from the state. This is why we're coming forward in the town meeting. In the fall, we are not trying to put the town over a barrel. This is the context, and this is what we have now. And this is the best, and this is why we believe this is the best proposal. Maybe it's this one that's in front of us now, and maybe it's a better one.
So for me, the crux of it is 30 or 15. Because if we're going to push it to fall and we're going to end up with 30 at that site, that's a problem. Because then we're going to run out of time and we're going to present the public with a strict deadline by the state. And we could be non-compliant unless we approve high density at Main Street. So to me, that's also a risk, right? Because once we open that up,
right?
I mean, we're not voting today on 15. We're voting to open it up and have a conversation. So I think we all just need to be aware.
But I think
once you open it up, you could be looking at high density above 15 by this September. So,
but I don't think that the working group would propose density of 30 at 1060. That removes the strategic advantage.
We're not proposing anything.
Right now,
We're
right.
right
Yeah.
now. We're trying to say, let's look at the things that are changing and see
Right.
if we can do better. Maybe we can't.
And it might
Maybe we
still be
can't.
this.
Yeah, let's
So-
see if we can do better. Let's have the opportunity to do better versus throwing away the opportunity to do better.
And it's that exact point that maybe Pond Street goes under construction and like whew, the risk of that 25% affordability evaporating goes away.
Exactly.
And like any of those.
I guess
pieces
what
that
I'm
go
saying
away.
is I am actually comfortable with that risk if I'm not getting 30% density at Main Street, me personally. And so I just want to, I don't want to be naive. Once you push this to fall, there is a risk that you're going to have high density at Main Street, above 15.
I mean, I
So-
think
But
all
that
of
would
us would
happen
agree.
regardless anyways. The chances that
Not by right. It would be a 40B project that has state regulation,
it is
including
now.
right now.
That's
But
what's
if
being
you
proposed.
have MBTA proposal, it would be by right at higher density.
But remember that the MPTA proposal is us.
Yeah.
It's us, and we're going to have this, we'd have to have the same
Public
forums,
forums.
which we had in this time, and we would have the same public hearings and the same discussions with the planning board and the select board. It's not the four of us just sneakily putting numbers on things, right? Everything has to be approved by the board. Everything has to be, it's just, you know, it's
And,
like.
and I
But-
guess
but
what
the
I'm
other-
saying is we already did this analysis. We already thought about density at Main Street. We already voted against it, right? So opening this up simply because there's a 40B, right? In order to rediscuss high density at Main Street is directly contrary to the analysis we already had.
But I think, Anna, we're not discussing density on Main Street that way. The density is taking place. We are reacting to what is
So
happening.
this is the
You
misconception.
have to let him finish his thought, Anna.
So what I think, more on the lines of what Kate was thinking, I think that the town does have there is a pressure on the vote, but it's not because of this. The state is putting the pressure on all these towns to do this, or else you lose these grants, and that is the real pressure. This vote or the vote in the fall is a decision on, do we want to be more conscientious and fastidious about the numbers to make sure the vote that we are being pressured to take is as well thought out as possible. That's really, I think maybe if we get in too much into the weeds, like we are not creating that pressure. The pressure was put upon us, right, by the state. So we are reacting, and I think if there's a group, and I trust this group because I was not part of it, but I know there's a lot of work that has been done, and by default, a project or two projects of 40B that are coming, by default, is a game changer to the downtown. Is a game changer. I don't know what the other one will be. We'll find out. But it is another level of pressure. why not consider it carefully?
I do want to have an opportunity to take public comment if anyone wants to talk about MBTA communities, and that goes for online as well. Please raise your hand online if you wish to speak. Peter, can you manage this?
Yeah, I'll manage you online, but Mr. Mark Dissoni is at the microphone.
How much time do I have?
Our meetings always go long, so I'd appreciate 3 minutes, Mark, and no more.
Okay, thank you. Mark Sony, 49 Hawthorne Road. It's group talking, group thinking, but it's a big pile-up of what MBTA is putting the pressure on to set forth. The housing, excuse me, I don't want to yell. The housing, no, wait a second, let's get back. The zoning, before anything goes through, has to be rewritten and re-go through town meeting, and then bring over to the Attorney General and have them state out what they want to say and have it pass or fail. The math is numbers. But what I'm hearing is 2 words, maybe and if. If that can't get past those 2 words, and hoping the Attorney General can get things going, this is going to be a round and round circle discussion with no end. Thank you.
Joan Gonfrati, One Shore Road. I'm here as a resident right now. This just boggles my mind, truthfully. But I'm trying to understand. There's a couple of questions that I have. If we pass it in the spring, if we pass the current proposal in the spring, can you then go back and change it in the fall?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Because to me, so far, I mean, I think you all know I hate the whole thing, but that's beside the point, is you've done a huge amount of work, and I totally respect that. I really, really do. I can't even imagine having to do it. But I do think that the plan that you've come up with it incorporates, be careful how I say this, I guess, but it incorporates things that are basically already built or planned for. And I think, to Anna's point, by opening up 10 to 60 Main Street, the worst thing to do there is to allow them to build by right. And I know what they're building, what 40B is this close to that. So I don't really honestly know how you're going to come with the answer. But I guess if we go to town meeting and it passes this spring town meeting and things change and you really realize that it needs to change, then yes, we have to come back to fall. But for right now, this seems to be the best plan for us. My other question is why we can't add into the zoning 25% affordable across the board, or 12%, or some number. I know, but why? I don't understand why. I'm just asking the question.
Are you asking it in terms of Ashland or in terms of the projects at hand?
Ashland, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we were looking at an inclusionary zoning bylaw a few years back that didn't make it through the planning board meeting. And so we decided at that time to wait until the comprehensive plan to have more input on the next, hopefully, iteration of an inclusionary zoning meeting. We're not allowed by the state to make the MBTA zones 25% affordable. We actually had a consultant that came in and did an analysis that gave us the numbers about what would be acceptable for the affordability. The state will allow us to do 10% in MBTA districts, and I think one zone, which one was it, Pond Street?
The Pond Street Overlay District, from a financial standpoint, would support 12.5% at affordable rate.
But that's all we could put in our zoning for these areas.
As part of the
As
MBTA.
part of the MBTA.
It's part of the MBTA.
But technically, the town can always rezone separate from this,
Sure.
right?
There can
Yeah.
always be other
So like,
zoning.
the MBTA process, we can't go above 10% or 12 for that one district. But
Okay.
as part of the comprehensive plan, we could have inclusionary zoning for the entire town or sections of it that are different from what the state considers viable for the MBTA district.
You just have to remember that there's other complexities with inclusionary zoning. You can't just put a blanket on something and say that now everyone has to provide 25% affordable, because it has to do with property rights and the value of property. Because as soon as you say now you have to have 25% of your property affordable, you've now decreased somebody's property value instantly, right? Because they have to provide for those units. Thus, when we had the inclusionary zoning proposal, part of that was if you had an increase in affordable units, you got compensated by an increase in density or a decrease in parking, things like that. So you're trading the value. So it's a little bit more complicated.
And you
than
have
that.
to trade the parking
Because you
spaces and
can't
things
take
like
away
that?
someone's property value with zoning. It's the bottom line.
Inclusionary zoning is seen as a density. I mean, it's seen as a density, but it's a bonus, right? So what you're doing is if you're allowing 100 units, you're asking them to build at 110, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that 10%, those 10 units are discounting, yes, those 10 units are discounting the impact on the town's subsidized housing inventory.
And there are other considerations too, that other communities that have increased their
Correct.
affordability thresholds are observing that they're experiencing far more 40Bs, and because developers are just choosing to go the 40B route rather than comply, because the difference is so small, rather than comply. So why go through the town and go to the planning board when you can just do the 40B and have a very comparable affordability number? So there's a lot of pros and cons. I think it's a complicated.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, right? There's pros and cons to each tactic, right? And if, areas of, urban areas, not Ashland, right? East of us, right, have a higher inclusionary zoning percentile, right? But also their demographics, their densities, the value of the property and the land, those are also going to support a higher subsidized housing inventory. I mean, a higher inclusionary zoning percentile. And I think, say it's 15%, right? And so, yeah, what is the difference? It's 10%, but in some cases, yes, it's driving people towards a 40B, and they're asking for all waivers of a town bylaw. And so there's a pro and a con to everything. That's what a takeaway is.
So, not to take away from anything that
Please.
you've all done. Absolutely, as I said, I totally respect what you've done. I know it's hours and hours of work and days of work. But it seems to me that the state is now mandating 40B, it's now mandating MBTA, and it's mandating what we can do for affordable, and I think it's just insane. So that's just my personal opinion. But thank you for the hard work. Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so,
Another gentleman.
sorry.
Curtis Hoffman, Hilldale Road. Forgive my naivete in this, because I'm fairly new to the Historical Commission. If the total number of units at Main Street were reduced, though the number of affordable units remained the same, would that not help with the percentages?
So you're saying, so if the number of units decrease, correct?
Yes.
So say the project went from 250 to 200.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at a 5-story tall,
And what's the second step?
Construction.
What was the second step?
but the number of affordable units in that remained the same as it was when it was 250.
Correct. So within a 40B process, a comprehensive permit, and this is a law that hasn't changed since for a long time, right? So regarding 40B comprehensive permits, 25% of those units in total have to be considered affordable, and those are protected to folks making up to or less than
Right.
80% of area median
Yep,
income,
yep.
which has allowed the town to add all 20 units on a rental project, all 200 units on a rental project to the subsidizing housing inventory.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering whether, if, just hypothetically, the Main Street project were 4 stories instead of 5, but the number of affordable units were the same as it was when planned with 5, if that would not assist in the percentages that you're trying to achieve.
But
The-
the
the
math,
prob-
the math wouldn't work, though.
Yeah, the problem is that as the number of affordable units goes up relative to the overall units.
No, I'm not saying the number of affordable, relative to the total,
Relative,
yes.
right?
Yes.
The project is more, it's less profitable.
Yes.
And so it doesn't get built.
Ah,
So
that's the other kind of risk, in other words.
yeah, the numbers don't work out for them. They work out
Okay.
nice for us, but they don't work out for
Yeah,
them.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. I misunderstood.
So, I don't see anyone online, our big crowd on these discussions. So, we do need to figure out what we're going to do with this tonight. There are several options. And I want to say that because this situation is unusual, it's way past my level of experience. Earlier in the week, I requested a meeting with our working group and with Michael Herbert and with Jen Ball to understand things from the big picture, to see if I was missing anything from their point of view, right? And they didn't really say that we were missing anything. Like, why wouldn't, and Joe and I were both like, why wouldn't we wait until fall? And they didn't think we were missing anything in that conversation, that there were no risks, except for the one that Kate has been fearful of. That there were no risks in waiting till fall as far as the relationship with the state and or anything like that, right? So then I had a conversation. It was me, Jen Ball, and Elvero had a conversation with Lisa Mead to try to understand, again, the process. Are we doing things correctly? How would we do this? And she gave us some information about ways that we could, options for us to proceed as a board. And then finally, I had a phone call today with me, Jen Ball, and Adam Schuster, the town moderator, because of trying to understand how these complex situations work at town meeting. So it's been a very busy week to try to get all this information to understand the best ways forward. Our ways forward are, one, we don't close the public hearing. We're in a public hearing right now. For any kind of vote to happen, we first would have to vote to close the public hearing. We simply don't vote to close the public hearing. If the public hearing is not closed, the warrant cannot go to town meeting. The meeting is not done. We're still talking about it. We're still thinking about it. We're still potentially changing it, right? It's not done. It just stays open. The public hearing stays open till the fall or whenever we want to take it up again, right? Option two, we make a recommendation to table. We close the public hearing and we make a recommendation to table this warrant article until fall town meeting, right? Whatever date that happens on, that it will come forward at fall town meeting. Option 3 is that we close the public hearing and we make no recommendation. And I believe that was also a matter of that the town,
So with that option, the warrant goes through. Because you don't make a recommendation, so it has already been submitted, so it is voted on.
I believe that, that town meeting, because it is a zoning article, the town meeting can't take it up because the planning board has made no recommendation.
That's true. So here, the public hearing is within 21 days of the town meeting, and so therefore, there has to be a recommendation made on town meeting floor by the planning board.
Fourth option is that we vote to approve it as is. And the fifth option would be to vote it down as is. That's the one option that, I won't say this, that's certainly one option that would look very bad at the state level. That we voted it down. So,
But if the public votes it down at the meeting, what is the effect with the state? Would they wait for maybe the fall and see if maybe in the fall it passes or not?
under which, if, you mean if we approve it and the town votes it down?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
It's the same
You
effect?
can take it up again at fall. You can as long as the planning board,
As long as the planning board makes a positive recommendation in the fall,
Then it goes back.
then it goes back,
Oh.
correct. Now, how is it going to be seen? I'll tell you right now, it's probably not going to be seen in the
Yeah, I can imagine.
bright sunshine and light, and it's probably, but I don't think, here's the other thing, I don't think that's the MO of the town, right? The MO of the town is to reach compliance, right? So I think, my personal opinion, if you're asking, is that, if a negative occurred, I think it would link Ashland to a negative, and it would put Ashland, yes, in a negative light, but that's not the light that's not the position we're in, right? We're in a positive position, and we're trying to make the best plan for the town.
I have to say I'm struggling, and the reason I'm struggling is the history of this project is one that is very complex, and I'm talking about Main Street, where there's multiple years of very close work between the applicant, and I'm going to refer to the applicant that we have worked with, and the town relative to this site. And obviously, there's been continued communications through this 40B process since January. So I'm struggling because I understood the process to be the planning board and the select board worked together. We had a working group that created a draft for that entity to work together, which we voted for and approved. And it sounds like that entity, kind of separate from the planning board, select board vote, already sort of has doubts about this work.
what entity?
The working group. So I'm struggling because whatever I vote for, there is no person who's ready to show up at town meeting next week and actually support what the planning board and select board voted for. So I'm really struggling, and I think I will have to abstain from this particular vote because, frankly, it's extremely contrary to the process that I thought we were going to follow, which is planning board and select board came together in a collaborative process. We asked for the working group to draft something for town meeting in the spring. We voted excitingly for it, and now we have a working group that no longer supports it without any vote from the select board and planning board that we are concerned.
Well, the planning board, obviously, the planning board is the one that sends voting, zoning amendments through. So we don't need the select board to send anything through. I think the thing is that what I would say is that we actually followed the process exactly. The thing that we couldn't predict are the things that were outside of our control. And so it's a matter of, do you ignore those things and plow ahead anyway? Or do you want to step back and say, hey, I'd like to take a better look at it now that factors have changed.
I mean,
You
Rich-
can feel however you want to feel about it. That's why we'll
No,
have to
that's
come to-
fine. I think Rich has threatened 40B for a long time. I don't think any of this is a surprise or a shock or some kind of, ooh, we didn't know this was going to happen until 2 weeks ago. I think this has been discussed openly for quite some time. It's come up at planning board meetings that 40B is a threat. The planning board, in prior discussions with the select board, has heard arguments that it's the planning board's fault, essentially, that we were not flexible enough with this developer. And so I don't view this as some sort of new data. I view this as a jeopardization of a process that was working really well. So I will not be participating in this vote.
Well, does anyone else have a, I guess it really depends on how you, what I wanted to ask Adam Schuster about was, would we have the opportunity, and here I'm talking basically about the working group, to explain at town meeting why we took the turn that we did, you know? And he was figuring out how it fits within the structure of town meeting, because that also has a structure. But he understood why I was asking for that, and he is willing to accommodate that, so that it isn't just, nope, we're moving on, that there's a brief explanation why. There's not a discussion why, but there's a brief explanation why. So that's kind of where we stand. Deepa, you've been the quiet one on this. Is it because you're right in the middle?
Kind of. I'm torn between the two sides of this. And after she asked as well, what happens if the town votes and it goes forward? You still have an opportunity for fall to change gears. So I am torn a little bit between the two. I hear your side of it and what Anna was saying, but I don't think I have a clear path on this.
For me, is that and I don't know how big of a risk it is of the two projects we've already approved. But the risk that even if we wanted to change things at fall town meeting, the risk is still open until that change happens, right? The risk is still there. It's not, we get a pause on the risk until we actually decide what we want to do. The risk is still, is there then for that amount of time. So, yeah, so I mean, is this this is just where we at. If there had been no, yeah, I've explained it enough times. So again, the options are, just not to close the public hearing. We continue the public hearing until the first meeting in September, or the last meeting in August, or whatever we want to set it for.
That's correct. That's correct, and then we would re-advertise, obviously. And then, obviously, that also gives time and for the planning office to recalculate and to recalibrate the model, to understand what's going on at 1060 Main Street at that point. You know, let that project take a little bit of shape. Love the second 40B, you know, obviously we'll get more information on that. And then also, from the information I am collecting, I think I am confident there'll be some movement at the 501 Pond Street project. And so I think, you know, if process there eliminates our concern, building permits are pulled, right? Then yeah, you keep it in and you can keep, you know, obviously you keep it in and you keep it at that density. And then you could look elsewhere, you know, look elsewhere in town, you know, 10 to 60, the second 40B project. And then you could rezone from that point to see, okay, this is what we need to do and this is where we need to go. And it could, and what we theoretically do is we're depressing the pressures, right, off of the two projects that right now do not have any building permits out. and that's the UGC project and the 501 Street project.
We, by default, you're not gonna have a permit for 1060 Main.
No, you will not have a project for that, but you'll
So-
know, but it will be filed with the zoning board of appeals, I believe at that point. There'll be public hearings for that. And then you could take that land area and you could build it in at a minimum of 15 units per acre by right. Then you're adding that into your density calculator. What in turn you can do with that, right, those units that you're plugging into the calculator, and is that you're depressing the number of units in the other developments, right? And so for the 501 Street project, right now we're right up at the 120. We could therefore say, okay, that's going to be by right at, I think it's 23 units per acre. So you can drop that down to 17 units per acre. So you're reducing the risk that somebody comes in to try to re-permit that entire project to get away from the 25%
So I thought the
affordability.
math was not done. So I'm getting
I'm just
kind of
throwing out now,
confused.
I am taking,
Yeah.
I've run the numbers so many times,
Yeah.
Anna,
Okay.
that I can calculate the numbers in my head.
Okay.
But these are no numbers
Yeah.
to set a mooring on.
I mean, I want to
hook
be
'em.
very clear that we need to be open, that we're not proposing 15% density. We're opening up the room for a conversation about density.
100%.
So in the middle of a negotiation, because a 40B is technically a negotiation with a developer, we're letting the developer understand that, hey, we might give you high density by right. So I just want to be clear and not naive. I'm not going to pretend that we're going to get 15% there. 15 density. We could technically get 30 through this process.
Just remember that you would be part of the people that would be voting for that.
I
right?
already
Like-
voted. We already had a vote where we already evaluated whether Main Street should have density. I already voted. I remember doing that with the select board, and we decided not to include Main Street in this analysis.
Okay, so, yeah. So
But there's really just two options, whether we continue the.
I have 5 options here, but not all
Yeah,
of them
but
are
some
good.
are kind of a distinction without a difference,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's either it goes to the spring or not. That's a variation within those options, that's what they do, right?
Yeah,
One or the other. That's really the crux.
so I think that's the,
Yeah,
I think,
Just for the
you know
rec-
where I said, I don't want it to go in spring. I want to take the time, I want to do a better job, I want to get all the information, I want to go in fall. Anna sounds like she is going to abstain.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I think there's value on that, so that's my position.
I think that I will have to abstain because I feel like the way that this could play out is just not seeming like good public process, and I feel like that's gonna, I think we could recover from that by the option of not closing the public hearing and setting a very detailed plan and check-ins and how this is gonna go, because I feel, we did take a vote with the select board and planning board to go forward, and then I feel like my perception of the working group was to bring stuff back to the board, not to make decisions. So I feel like that a little bit happened, and I'm not saying it's for bad reasons, but that all matters to me, and it matters to me how it's reflected to the public. So the option of not closing the public hearing with very detailed check-ins, plan, what I'm afraid could happen is we're still looking, because I know it's a lot of work, but there's nothing, and now it's like, oh, it's October, and the first time people are hearing about it again, and that would be my concern.
Kate, I can promise you as a town planner that this is not going to sit on the back burner, and we could continue to work on this through the
Oh, I
summertime.
understand it will be worked on. My concern is communicating to the public and among ourselves and to ourselves along the way. I absolutely believe you'll be working on it, and I believe that people didn't stop, which is why we're here. I do get that.
So you're saying, Kate, that if with the meeting open,
Right.
if there is a consistent schedule of checking in on where the numbers are and
Exactly.
things, so that everybody hears it,
Yes.
and we're getting better prepared along the way.
I could
That's
support that.
reasonable.
It's reasonable.
I can live with that too.
All right, so,
But I'm just going to be clear, I don't want to, what would not consider support to me is putting it here, but we never get to it. I would make, if we're making some kind of motion, it really has to be way, way better than it's on our agendas. We have to figure out how that's really, really communicated and on the website and regular.
So I'm understanding this right? That process is, by means of its effects, leaving the time for the process to get done, or is different? I'm trying to distinguish between those two options.
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Like we said, one option is to say, no, it's gonna go to the fall town meeting. But that's what this alternative, one of the 5 that Lisa gave you, that's what this would be doing. Only with the caveat that Kate says, that it would not be just, oh, we'll pick it up right before that. No, obviously, work's gonna be being
I
done.
think not, so you're worried about not closing the hearing, looking like option 5, which is voting it down.
I'm trying to understand the difference. Because, I mean, in principle, I already said it. I agree with you, and I think that I like the opportunity to get the best option for the town. Is that equal to this? The option of
Yes.
not closing the meeting?
Tricia, the
Yeah,
worry
I
with
think so.
actually voting it
It's the
down,
same,
and the
right?
worry that like that looking bad to the state is more about like, we as the planning board have like refused to put a warrant article forward and also like are disagreeing with our own proposal essentially that we.
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
I think
is
the
different.
option 1 about leaving the public hearing open is from Michael's view, from Jen's view, and from Lisa Mead's view, was really saying, we have something in process here. We're just not done with it. We
Yeah.
couldn't get done with it in time. We're working on it.
Yeah.
We're not saying we don't want to do it. And they did not, because that was one of my concerns. That was one of the reasons I wanted to meet with Michael and Jen, is how does this look from the outside? I don't
Yeah.
want it to look bad, because that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying
Yeah.
to not do it. We're trying to do it in the best way we can, right? So they, both Lisa, thought that number 1 is the way that she would go, is to leave the public hearing open. And for the town moderator's perspective, separately, he said that that was the best option as well, is to leave the public hearing open.
So that accomplishes that, and what Kate just added was
Yes.
that we have an overview of the process continuously.
Correct.
Right.
I think that's the thing, like I've been saying, it's like, I wish I could cross this off my to-do list,
Oh,
but
sure.
instead we're having Elvro run more numbers, right? We don't know what the results of those numbers are yet.
Okay.
Right? We don't know, I think they're gonna be changing over the months as we get more and more information.
Yeah.
We have an option of changing something in the whole rail transit district, if you wanted to eliminate that 30%. We have that option too.
Well, I mean, if we're leaving it, and if we are leaving it open, I want a plan and opportunity to revisit some other things as well that I believe could be tightened up.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, none of those things have come up in any of these meetings, but that doesn't mean that they can't come up as we go forward, right? It opens up to, it opens back up again. And like I said,
Well, let me be clear, I was a supporter of it and I didn't bring it up, but I am bringing it up now. If this gets some way not at Springtown meeting, I would like that revisited.
What
So I-
revisited again? The rail transit district.
The portion that's left open because it was like an overview way, maybe not the best way of getting the best for the town, right?
It's
that's
something we'll have to look at.
Yeah.
Just know that, as I keep saying, it's not as simple. It's not as simple as everything we're describing, because there's covenants on the property. It's layers of stuff. So that's why it's, that's, yeah.
So under the option where we don't close the public hearing, the warrant doesn't go forward at town meeting, but the moderator is willing to let you give an update to the public, and then we also retain it on our agenda for regular updates
That's right.
between now and the fall. Okay.
That's right. We would simply be making a motion to continue the public hearing until, I guess we would say, what?
Sine die.
Sine die?
Sorry, Latin.
Oh, I skipped that one.
But we could make it sooner.
Without
We-
an end date.
Yeah, without an end date. I think
We-
at the biggest thing, the public hearing for this, right, with the zoning regulations, we're always going to have to republish it, right, to meet the criteria of passing a zoning bylaw in the fall, right? So I think that's going to have to happen from your standpoint, Kate, is, you know, updates, where we're going to go. You know, I think, you know, if we can have a month right now, we have to get through town meeting. You know, things are very busy here. And if we had a month, we could say, yeah, let's change the numbers, let's work on it, let's plug this stuff into the algorithm of the model. And then, yeah, we could come back to the planning board and give a report and say, yep, this is where this could change in the future, this is where this could change in the future. And in a month, we may have more data about the projects that are going on in town.
So I think that don't close the public hearing is like a technicality now for everyone to essentially save face in a positive way, that we are still working. And it ultimately, though, has to get closed because it won't be the same warrant. So that's a technicality, but it's not like it's left open until the fall.
Right, right. No, we, you know.
But I guess that's where I'm the one that say I'm willing to entertain that, but I want a really, really solid plan, or I will be abstaining as well. But I can see how that option makes sense and could work.
When you say you'll be abstaining, you mean tonight? Like, I can't
Yeah.
write a solid plan in the next few minutes that we have, right? All I can say is that I am willing to, and I'm sure Joe is as well. I will speak for the working group, saying that we'd be happy to have a solid plan about how to proceed. You know, I mean, we have our own plan that we make in our meetings and our investigations, but I think we're trying to do this transparently, which is why I brought it up 2 weeks ago. As soon as I knew something about it and our concerns, I brought it up. I was transparent about it, right? So yes, I mean, our ultimate goal is to make the best plan for the town. I'm not trying to say what that is. I'm just trying to say I don't know what it is right now. And so let's figure it out. And the more voices we have in figuring it out, I think the better.
I mean, in terms of in terms of having a solid process and not being able to do it tonight, like, just thinking about, I don't think the process as the working group did it this last time was wrong. I think it was, so like, if we sort of mimicked it just with the new information, and, you know, the working group, it puts together, runs the numbers, puts together options, comes to the meeting, presents the options, like, I feel like if that whole process is just like rerun in the next 6-7 months, like, that seems to be a way to like keep it, you know, we had it on the agenda, we had it regularly, like, we were checking in on this topic because it was so important. I feel like, would that be just sort of saying that, or
Yeah.
agreeing that, like, we would just handle it the way we did this round? I don't know if that's helpful.
Yes and no. I mean, I think we handled it really well. Could we do better? Sure we can.
No, I
Right?
think that process was great. That's
Yeah,
what I'm saying, like, if we
yeah.
just reiterate that, but just with the additional information.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously, like I said, public forums, we want to,
Right.
you know, it's just that we're just being hit by a lot right now. And I feel like I feel like we're being pressured to make it a decision because of these external factors that we're being hit with, you know, and I'm not comfortable with that. I can't say I'm doing my best job. So I think the question is, when we'd be making a motion to continue the public hearing, and do we have to put a date on that? Like, the first do we put a date on it to the first meeting in September? That was what people threw out, September, October, November, but maybe it would be better the first meeting in August, or
I'm happy to say the first meeting in August. I think that's a good point.
so it's even, we start the formal process even earlier,
And in the meantime, between May, in May, June, July, we will be running the numbers and collecting more information, and we can bring things back up to the planning board, in a proper timetable. But obviously, with a fall town meeting, probably scheduled late November.
But sometimes it's early November.
Sometimes it's early
Right,
November.
so we,
Tell you right now, it's an early Thanksgiving. It's going to be on the 22nd this year. No, I'm sorry. It's going to be late. It's going to be on the 28th. I lied. But yeah, I think, the first meeting in August is probably the best bet.
so,
So in fall, you will go back with option A that you have in your hand and
Potential.
replace potentially with 1060 Main. Is that how you'll approach the fall meeting?
no, I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding you, I'm saying that I don't know what the option is.
Yeah, that's right. So when you go back, would you take it as two options to present to the community, or would it be?
No, we can't do that. Your warrant is a warrant. You have to,
Within a public process, within a forum that we opened, the public forum, we had 2 of them for this process. We could say, yep, this is an option to go here, to go this way. We could present a different set of numbers, and I think within that public forum is where we would gather consensus. The working group, we had 2 public forums, and we had people at the forums, right? And they supported this option, and I think that was all done prior to the new information with the 40B process, with the 40Bs. And so I think but we can take those options to a public forum. Once you hit the bylaw regulations, you really you need to roll with one option.
So what's stopping us from swapping 1060 Main for the spring, for this upcoming town meeting, and seeing how the community reacts?
we can't do that. The
Because
warrant,
it's not yet.
the warrant's
it's already
written.
out there.
Yep, written,
Yeah.
it's not advertised.
It's not discussed.
Yes.
We can't undo.
What happens if this gets rejected in fall?
Then we're at the same thing it would happen if something got rejected in spring and it got rejected in fall. Like, that could
We
happen too.
would fail to meet the state deadline. That's what would happen, which would open us up for losing funding. It's a risk that we should be aware of.
And we can come back in the fall with the same plan that we have today. We're not gonna, there's no gold, there's no star out, we're not gonna get a star because we adopted the zoning bylaw today. This bylaw works, and I'm gonna make sure that this bylaw does work at the state level to make sure that it does get approved. So we do have an option to move forward with in the fall.
So, I was waiting for Amanda to come back, so she just doesn't, I know she can't vote, but just so that she can hear what's going on.
So we need a motion to continue right now.
Correct.
I think we'd be looking for a motion to continue the
August
MBTA
8th.
community public hearing until the first planning board meeting in August. I thought I saw her coming down.
She's coming back.
I said I just don't want to
Yeah.
have things happen while she's out of the room for 30 seconds.
Okay. I'll make a motion to continue the discussion, the open hearing for the MBTA communities to the first planning board meeting in August.
Is there a second?
Second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
I'm abstaining.
Marcelo Arjona, aye.
Catherine Jersey guy.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So we will continue this until August. Yeah. And we will continue the effort, and based on the deep knowledge that we have now, we can start looking even broader, even deeper at different options to get us, like I said, so that when we're ready to go in front of town meeting, it's not the option that was best 2 months ago. It's the option that was best, it's best at that time, the closest we can get to where we are in the fall. That's what, so.
Tricia, I apologize. I think I had to have a hard stop at 10:30.
Okay. Then we have people here from the historical. Hi. You understand, but I do apologize. So,
just real quick, Joan Friday will present. In your packets, you do have a presentation put together by Joan. It is 6 slides.
We don't need the slides if you want. I can do it real quick if you'd
Okay,
rather
that's awesome.
just be done. Okay?
Jim Nielsen sent over a map, and this is the proposed local historical district, not on the warrant for this town meeting.
No, we're gonna put that forward in the fall. So that's why I want Joan to go.
Okay.
We're on for her for the spring meeting next week.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
I'll just briefly say a couple words after she's done. Just the packet just came in to me today. So I'll give you all a chance to look at it. I'm happy to come before the board again at a different time. Hopefully earlier in the evening when everybody's fresh.
And then the third thing was sent by you, Joan, correct? Or was it Jim?
It was Jim.
This is a preliminary study report draft. And so I don't know if you'll get this tonight, but obviously I printed it out for everybody to take home and to breeze through.
And when John's concluded, I'll just give you a brief synopsis of what we're doing, what that's related to. Okay.
Okay.
Microphone's yours, Joan.
Okay. Hello, all. Please don't hold my previous comments against me. So it's really good to see you all in person. I'm Joan Gonfrati, Wenshaw Road, member of the Historical Commission, sorry. We're hoping for your support of an update to the demo delay bylaw. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it in your packet, but if you haven't, currently a person anticipating a sale of their property with a dwelling over 70 years old can just go through the process and wait out the delay. There are 2 changes we're proposing. First, the property is sold and the new owner must go through the process themselves. Second, if 3 years go by with no approved plan, the owner would need to go through the process again. We've just basically added a sunset clause. The hope is that you can support these changes to encourage owners of historically significant properties to seek out options that will preserve Ashland's historical buildings. That's really all it is. So if there are any questions?
I do have a quick one.
Sure.
It's one that I think I made in the past. So I get it. So 70 years is being the threshold for any structure, just for the town to potentially evaluate.
Correct.
Whether it's historic or not.
And it comes before the Historical Commission, they do an evaluation and say, yes, it's significant or not, no, it's not significant. Correct.
Okay. I guess my question is, wouldn't be, and I guess this is probably more broad, but wouldn't be also necessary for the Historical Commission or with the help of others to create a list that is known of what is significant, because it's kind of spreading the net out without to see what you catch. Whereas if there's a determination, let's say that this is the historic, like this, but this is a survey and there's a list that the town knows, very specific houses or buildings that have significance. Wouldn't that be the way to address it from a more specific point of view?
Jim Nielsen, Ramblewood Drive. We already have done extensive work on that. It's called the Macris list, and these properties are listed with the state. It's part of it in the back of the flyer that I put out.
Yeah, okay.
That gives you the actual properties that are considered historical in the town. As we inventory more, they're added to the list and registered with the state. So how old they are, what kind of intrinsic artistic value it has, or any kind of architectural style, that kind of thing.
So the change is just to extend the demolition delay.
All this, this is just for the demolition delay, because what's been happening, people have been getting the demo delays, and they're just sitting there, and nothing's happening. I can name 4 properties in this area, right by the town hall. They got the delays, they waited the 9 months, because now it's 12 months, but back then it was 9, and nothing's happened. And so they don't have to go through the process anymore. What we're proposing is that if nothing happens in 3 years, then they have to go through it all over again. This is not something that's unique. I mean, a lot of other towns have this. It's just something we should have put in when we amended the bylaw in the first place and didn't think of it until we saw this happen again.
What is the incentive that you're seeking with that? That you make the owner have
Well,
incentive to
the owner
do
is
something?
supposedly, theoretically, supposed to work with us to preserve the property in some way. If they don't, we don't really have a lot of teeth to do, it's private property. There's only so many things we can do. But this is to prevent somebody just filing this and like sitting on it for 3 years, and when they eventually get around to developing it, they'll have to go through the process all over again. You understand what I mean?
It gives a sunset clause.
It's a sunset clause.
No, I understand the process. I'm just trying to understand the objective and how the potential pitfalls.
Go ahead.
It sounds like it gives a second chance for a property to be saved.
Yes.
Exactly. Yes.
Versus a one-time deal, like you did the demolition delay, and now, from now until the end of time, you can take it down whenever you want.
But isn't that the process of evaluation of a demolition delay, like Joan just said before, or maybe it was Jim? The delay takes place. There's an evaluation. They go. They work with you. It's established. Okay, this building is significant or not. If the decision is made, then why do you have to go back to do this all over again? I mean, isn't that the point of the demolition delay in the first place?
Well, I think the demolition delay, there's only a demolition delay when it's judged to be architecturally significant.
No, it's by time, right? If it's 70 years old.
No, but they
No?
still can, right, so
No.
whatever property is, no matter how old it is, it goes in front. If they decide it's not architecturally certificate.
Or
It's
it's-
added on to too many times.
Or it's
there's
falling
nothing left of
down,
it,
or it's,
Exactly,
it's,
yeah.
there's any reason-
economically infeasible to fix it up.
Right, then
We've
there's,
had that happen.
Yeah.
We don't vote on it. That just goes and they go their merry way.
yeah, then there's no delay. Then it
No,
just
they
be
can go
considered-
and demolish it
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you
Right.
confirm that it's not.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
That's the process.
But,
Curtis Hoffman, 58 Hilldale Road. I guess the idea is that we have people who are gaming the law. That is, they're taking advantage of the lack of a sunset clause to wait out the process. And this would put some kind of a limit on that.
Yeah. And maybe, I said big maybe, incentive to work with the town, the commission, to try to preserve some of it or parts of it, or, there's no incentive to do anything. And they're supposed to follow all these, procedures and possibly move it, all this other stuff, which almost never happens because of financial reasons. But,
Yeah.
but we have no teeth to do anything as far as, enforcing anything. So this is just one tool that we think will help the town and whole preserve some of these properties.
and the hope is that someone comes before us, they do the demo delay, it runs out in a year, they still haven't sold the property, but then they sell it a year and a half later, and they sell it to someone who would like to preserve it, and they come before the historical commission, and we say, yes, we'll work with you, and we try to help them to find the right help to get it preserved. And I think the other thing is that if they just run out over time, they have to come back. And I think that's as I said, people are just,
If the property's sold,
yeah.
the new owner has to come
Right,
Do it again.
in.
yeah. And the new owner hopefully will want to do something. And that's, and we'll work with them. And I think the heart, well, or not, but I think that the hope is that either we help the person who is trying to sell their property find a person who wants to buy it to preserve it, or we help them to figure out how to preserve it themselves. And we're trying to give that a second option.
Was it just a second, or that's in perpetuity? Does it renew time again, or just one time?
For the same owner, it's just one time. I believe. That's the way it's written. Yeah.
It,
But if it
3 years.
changes hands,
If it
then
changes hands, the
however
clock
many
starts
times.
again.
Restarts.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
correct, yeah,
okay.
okay.
And I'll just say, while I'm standing here, what this is we've hired a consultant, a professional
Are you done?
I don't know.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Oh, you're sorry.
Does anyone else, that's
Does
okay.
anybody have any questions?
Anyone have any questions? Any other
No, I
questions?
have a question about this, but
Okay.
when you get to it.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
go ahead, sorry.
I'll be brief, because it's late. Again, I'm Jim Nielsen, I'm the chair of the Historical Commission. And when we first configured the commission again back in 2019, I was on the original board. And, you know, we have we have nice signs on either end of Main Street saying, "Welcome to Historic Ashland." And those are just signs. They don't signify anything. Someone just put them there. We do not have a local historic district. And I was looking around with all these demo delays going on. The only thing that preserves these local houses, the historic places like the town hall right here, is not even the National Register of Historic Buildings. It's a local historic district, because that is the only way that they're saved by the state forever. There's a lot that goes into this. I'd like to come back when we have more time, so I could take all your questions about what this actually entails. But just briefly, the map, I'll give you the outline of what we're proposing. Will go from the Historical Society, the Ocean House, across the street to the Mill Buildings. Yes, I know, it's all, the Mill Buildings, it's got to be contiguous. That's the whole point of this. It's a district that's contiguous. The Mill Buildings, whether they preserve some of the granite structures or not, that's still there. Down the church, the buildings next to the church, around the corner, down to a library next to Erica's, stopping there. Going back around up the street, left on Main Street, to Homer Ave, to the old train station, across the street to the brick buildings that are still going to remain. And then we go up to the post office, then along Main Street back towards the Ocean House to the corner spot here. We're not including the buildings on where the bagel table is, not like that, because that's all been redone. That's all new construction. Now, not everything in this district is going to be historical. That's the first question I get, like the cleaners, for example, or the liquor store. But they're placeholders. So if anybody wants to come in there someday and if it's in the district, they'll have to conform to what the district bylaws are. And this would be a set of bylaws. It's a separate commission from the Historical Commission. It's a local historic commission, a district commission, and it'll have like bylaws and guidelines of what they can do to the outside. We're really only allowed to deal with the outside structure of the structure. What they do with it, usage, interiors, none of our business. It's what you can see from the street, as long as it's to preserve the character of what's left of downtown Ashland. You know, so there's another thing like what happened on the corner here doesn't happen in the downtown. And the reason we picked downtown first, I mean, Ashland's got a lot of historic houses, but they're spread out all over the place. And we have to get 2/3 of the town meeting vote. In some places like Somerville, they'll do individual buildings as a historic district because they're a city council, and it's a lot easier to get the thing passed. Here, because everything's so spread out, we figured that it would be easier, and there's also less residences in the downtown, because we're not into taking anybody's property rights away or anything like that. It's just simply the facade. And the things that would be put into the bylaws, there's some examples in here to be voted on, but we wouldn't be concerned with like paint color or air conditioners or siding or any of that stuff.
Why
As
not?
long as it conforms.
Why not?
Because a lot of that stuff can be up to the individual. We don't have like Sturbridge Village out here. It's already a hodgepodge of different styles and different colors. And someone said at the meeting once, well, we don't want somebody to paint their house purple. Well, we already have a purple house in the district, and she doesn't have to change it. It should be grandfathered in. But that's kind of where we're going with that. I personally, we don't have the prettiest downtown, but it's worth preserving what we do have. As far as in some of these structures, the histories are in here too, are very historic and have been here since, the town hall is the oldest building in town, I believe, that's still used as a municipal building. There's a few houses that are older, but the church, we don't know whatever's going to happen down the line, then the new owners or present owners will have to conform to that. So.
I have two questions. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
My question is just, I was looking at this list and I was curious, like 949 Homer Ave, for example.
Yeah,
You listed that as contemporary style. Is there a reason like one or two properties in this list fall in that style as a contemporary style? And why would you consider that
This is
to be a historic
the,
property?
the preservationist, she does this for a living. Her name is Stacy Spies, and she's from Hopkinton, but she does this all over the country. That's the name that she put on it, because it's not like I said, not everything is going to be quote-unquote historic. Contemporary style or different, yeah, you go ahead.
The terminology is contributing or non-contributing elements. That's the language that the Mass Historical Commission uses.
Yeah.
And so that would be an example of a non-contributing,
Yeah.
and therefore would not be subject to the regulations of the local historical
And
district commission.
9 to 11 would be, I believe that's the brick building. That's the old Ebert drugstore, and
Yeah.
that's as is. I mean, and that qualifies on its own, as its own
Yeah.
style. Whereas, which is completely different from the town hall or the house, at the Ocean House down the end of the road there. The different style. So it's not going to conform to any one style.
And this does not also say that you have to preserve the facade as is, but
You have to try to preserve the facade as is, what can be seen from the street. Okay, so for example, if they wanted to put something in the back where you can't see it, that's out of the district's purview. If it's already there, it's out of the district's purview.
But
right?
only if it's contributing.
As long as it's,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, you
Because-
wouldn't do it with the dry cleaners.
no. No, but if the dry cleaner goes away and somebody wants to put something there, it would have to conform to the district. Okay, they couldn't put a three-story apartment building right there.
Yeah.
Not that they would, but, I don't think they have space. But if they took the liquor store in that, who knows? So this would be out for public hearings. The next part, we are going to submit, we got to vote on this, and we will be submitting it to the State Mass Historical Commission for their feedback. And eventually, there's a whole process. It gets approved by the Attorney General's office. And eventually, once it's all approved and voted on at town meeting, it'll be registered in the Registry of Deeds. It'll be attached to every property here as part of the property.
Every contributing element property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, just a question. In principle, I agree that this is the right area to do it,
Yeah.
downtown. I'm not sure about the details of what you just said. Because I agree, we don't have the prettiest downtown or structures that are,
It's a mishmash.
with some exceptions,
Yeah,
that are like really that significant. So I guess the idea, it would be ideal that the change incentivizes to change what is not contributing, not significant, to become something that is harmonious
Contributing, right.
with that. But my question, to me, is just jarring to see the geometry of these districts, and I want to know what is the, why you get to here and take a turn. If we have a district, my sense of a historic district would be, like, or the downtown, if you will, would be to have a recognizable boundary that you say, okay, you're entering, like the sign, and from all sides. When you go in all these different directions, it seems
well, that's
like,
just
it
the
seems like
topography.
gerrymandering,
That's topography of the assessor's lots.
no, it's not, because in some lots, you get to the middle of the lot and then you turn the corner and don't include
I don't
three
know if
other
that's completely,
properties.
I don't know if that's completely accurate.
Like in this one, for example.
Yeah, which one?
This is the topography here and by Homer Avenue is the same, but then you turn the corner and just include this one but not that one, and that goes all over the place. Let's say behind the library.
Wow.
That road is,
The one, the library and next to the library, Erica's.
no, behind, because that's included, right?
We're not going behind the library. That's just included
No, but
as,
see my point.
yeah.
Like here, you go like that. And maybe not this peninsula, but the topography around here is the same, but you go like that even.
But isn't it about looking
What is
at
the- what is the-
isn't it about looking at the street facade and not the plan? I know it looks kind of yucky on the plan, right? But it's about looking at where you're trying to protect the street facade.
Right.
I think that's one of the considerations.
Because the plan doesn't matter, or.
But does it? Because I'm seeing that the street facade, I agree, that there's the value of a pedestrian scale, textures, materiality, that's all important, no doubt. But But especially I mean, this town has an industrial birth, right? And it's more like the district itself. Yeah, the street and the facades are important, but it's more of like the experience of what is the historic district. If I can recognize it, if I can walk around and say, okay, the historic district, there's a boundary, but it's not like that. You know?
And I get it. I mean, I think it's just because this isn't coming up, obviously, next week.
No.
So it's just a point taken. I think.
Yeah, it's just a
Point
comment.
taken.
Can I just make one comment to that? Because, so Stacy Spies said something to us that made a lot of sense, and maybe this will help you to picture it. If you, the intent of an historic district is to be able to stand in the middle, if you put yourself in the middle of the road, in the middle of that district, and you looked around, that those are the historical buildings. Not so much the back of the building and the back of that, it's not the squares of the plots, it's the facade of the whole
facade.
downtown.
Yeah.
No,
I also
understand,
think
but-
we have to be careful because a lot of what's not in it is private residential versus what's in is actually it's more likely to be commercial and publicly owned.
That was exactly the point.
I
Also,
think-
That was exactly the point. We didn't want to
Yeah.
include too many residential houses in
Yeah.
this one, because, I mean, there are other candidates for a neighborhood that could be, but then you run into everybody,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason I was
worrying
gonna
about taking their property, what they can and can't
Alright,
do with their
so-
land. However, this is why we wanted to do downtown, the commercial area, and the public buildings first, so that people could see that it's not the end of the world kind of thing, and we've done it, I mean,
Yeah, I think this is more likely to
That
fly
that helped me out.
relative
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
have to say, there's streets in Ashland, that are, like, historic is obviously up for a definition, and this is based on the state thing, which I appreciate, because it's kind of subjective otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
So I like that. I like the fact that there is like a state piece to it.
this is a state project. We have to get approval from the state.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, I've been to a couple different seminars run by the Mass Historical Commission
So I think
on
that's
getting this
important.
going. Yeah.
I think we should just realize it's not
And
like.
people have tried to do this for years in Ashland,
Yep.
and it just gets stalled at one point or another. We had a
Right.
lot of stuff inventoried back in 2010, which you can see online. And some of that's incorporated in here, but we had about 7 or 8 other properties added to that, which went into what I spoke earlier of the MACRIS list, which is the master list of historical properties in the state.
And the one thing I was going to suggest is when you, and I haven't read this entire thing, but you may want to, my understanding is that when you get state recognition, there could be grants and other things that are available to us.
Yep.
I would put that front and center,
Yep.
like page 1.
Yep. And,
Because that's massively related to economic development.
yep.
So like
Well, this kind
Salem-
of dovetails in with the comprehensive plan,
Yep.
the downtown revitalization,
Yep.
the whole thing. I think the timing is kind of surreptitious, so it's serendipitous. Thank you, Kurt.
I just
Not
wanted
the
to
word I was looking
underline-
for. It's too late for me to speak.
Yeah.
But,
To me, it's important to underline it's not like a random thing. It's actually state-based. State has to approve.
no, this is state approved.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'll be happy to come back. We're going to be doing a couple of forums. We'll be at the farmer's market. We'll be at Ashland Day. Hopefully it doesn't get rained out this year. I've got a big blown up map of that little map there that Peter helped me make a while ago that, for educational purposes. And one other thing, we're in the process of doing a fold out walking tour of that area with QR codes. So we're going to put those at the town hall, the library, blah, blah, blah. People can take it out and give themselves a self-directed tour of a lot of these properties. When you just put the phone on the code, give you the whole MACRIS listing will come up and the history of the building and all that stuff. So that's almost done.
Do you need anything else from us?
I just have one last thing, and that is Helen will fire me if I don't leave this.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna, if
I-
you'd like to take them, please feel free. We are restoring the cemetery.
I would say next time when you need to come and talk about this, remind us that you were patient and waited and demand to be put on first.
Well, honestly, I watch the meetings, and I don't know how you stay awake. I just don't know. I really don't.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No one does. Can I ask one question about this? Like, if there's some consensus that the planning board likes this concept, I think it might help us as we comment on the 40B. But
I don't think we should jump into a vote for something.
not a
that-
vote, okay, but that's fine. We can,
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
I
so,
will be looking at some point with this application from letters of approval from the select board and from the planning board. So if you agree to, I mean, at some point down the line, I'll be in touch.
Yeah, we just
when
need
all
to have
these-
more meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll come back and we can talk about that then.
okay.
Okay, because they do want to see the state wants to see that the town is kind of behind this.
Sure,
You know, you
Yeah.
want to have a yes vote before you get to town meeting.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
The only other thing is on our agenda is the specialized code. Just right now, I would personally recommend that we just don't take a vote on it. We don't have to, right? We obviously have different opinions. They haven't asked us to take a vote.
Yeah.
We obviously are in different places. We can discuss it more if we want, but if we're going to take a vote, obviously, this is the only time we have before town meeting. And I'm just throwing that out there. I'm happy not to take a vote on it. We're not obligated to. It's 10:40.
Up to you guys. You guys know how I feel about it, so it's.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, I think it feels that way, but so it's just not.
No, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's not going to be a unanimous voice, a unanimous vote.
You wanna take a vote right now, I'm fine.
Again, I'm looking for, I don't feel like we need to. If you three feel like we need to, then we'll take a vote.
sorry,
But I
what are
don't-
we voting for potentially?
Specialized code, if we're going
Okay.
to offer the planning board support of the specialized code, it's not a zoning amendment, we don't have to do anything. We could speak individually if we want at town meeting.
I think if we're
So-
not required to do it at this hour, I would not do a vote just for the sake of a vote.
I agree. I just want to make sure we're not going to say that we didn't support it by not voting. Like, we're just completely silent and we're up to individual citizens. Is that correct?
That's my belief.
As a board?
Yeah, the board is not, we're not going to,
Agnostic, I guess.
Well, I don't think that,
If we don't vote.
well, I don't want, that was the question. I don't think we should be presenting any position from
No.
the board, not agnostic, not yes, not
No.
no.
I
We should-
would,
Or what is agnostic?
no faith. I would say that if asked, which I don't have to say anything at town meeting, I would just say that the planning board did not take a vote. We had discussed it at various times over various meetings, but we didn't take a vote. So,
and I would email Ash just to piggyback on that, just to say, hey, Ash, just to give you a heads up, the planning board did not vote, and we are not making a motion to go one way or the other, just so Ash doesn't present at town meeting that the planning board voted to support and to not support. I don't think he would do that, but I would just be clear that we would not want him to portray that the planning board voted to support and or voted to not support.
but if someone feels strongly that we should vote, then,
I mean, honestly, almost 11 o'clock at night, I think the messaging should be, the planning board did not have sufficient time to discuss and vote this.
Yeah,
We're sorry.
I
Like,
think that's
that's
fine.
the proper message.
We're not required to take a vote of everything. We can speak individually as individuals and not as the planning board, if we just so wish at town meeting. Right? Yeah. Get out of here.
See you later.
Have a good evening
Have a good evening.
All right.
and morning. Ah.
I think that is actually the end of our agenda unless, I have public comment. Mark, you spoke once. Are you good with that?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll
Thanks.
make a motion to adjourn at 10:43 PM.
Second,
I'll vote.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Catherine Jersey guy.
Amanda Hayes, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. All right.
Thank you, Mackie. Just for clarification, the meeting on Tuesday, everybody wants it to be.